Tick-tock, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. I just realized that I forgot to send out this link, so I will do it right now. Boom. That's one. What else? Where are we?
Oh, I forgot to send out this link, so I'll just do that right now.
What, did I not send it on? I thought I sent it on Twitter. I didn't send it on Twitter. What's wrong with me? What is this, amateur hour?
Probably.
What is this, amateur hour here?
Probably.
That's weird. I recall writing a tweet. It's just not here. It's not here to send. Okay.
We are live and we live.
Okay. We're live. It's a good little intro to this video. We're live going through an interview about an atheist historian who became a Christian thanks to the, I don't want to say stupidity because she wouldn't put it like that, extremely dumb. What am I going to do? We're live going through an interview about an atheist historian who became a Christian thanks to the extremely
interesting.
It's not extremely interesting.
Why is Ruslan posting about you, man? Did you go meet up with him?
Darn right. Went to his studio. It sucks because we had to be really quick because it was like we had to go to the airport like right after that. And we barely made our flight, but yeah, we had to have. We did a short session there in Ruslan's studio. It was me, Anthony, Arthur, and then after we had to head out, Vocab jumped in. So it was pretty based.
Based.
Yeah, he asked, matter of fact, it's a good little video to share. He asked me why I'm harsher than a lot of people would find acceptable with Islam. So I actually got to break that down, but that was in the live stream, and then he made a separate little, he published that as a separate video. Let's see. We're live going through an interview about an atheist historian became a Christian. Let me just say thanks to the new atheists. New atheists. All right, there we go. Thanks to the new atheist. We'll stick with that. I won't say anything mean because we don't want AP crying. And here,
why would I care about atheists? I don't care about atheists.
Well, look, you got Dejan here saying, why does thumbnail don't have tears on AP's face? I thought that right after I posted it, but then I was like, I don't feel like remaking it and having AP cry. Be like, no, she should have become an agnostic. But she didn't become an agnostic like me. Always good when AP cries because he lost another one. Hey,
That's
AP,
true.
How you doing?
Yep.
You were just telling me before we started that you're working on some new super song.
Oh yeah, I was just I wrote a song in a Gregorian chanting about Zabiba. Yeah. I was just practicing that. It goes like this, like, upon my brow behold Zabiba.
We should have a skit. We should have a skit about, dude, a lot of like Key and Peele skits. You ever watch any Key and Peele skits?
No.
Okay, there's Key and Peele, and I noticed that like half of their skits are, it would be observational comedy, but instead of just commenting on it and making a joke about it, they go to an insane, they make an observation and then they take it to an insane extreme. But it would be funny like that, like Muslims competing over zabibas, and then like just a skit about how they kind of go back and forth to get more extreme zabibas and all the stuff they're banging on their heads so that they have the best zabibas. Not sure what they could do. Maybe we could take suggestions about all the different ways people could get better zabibas.
Zabiba, Zabiba, Gloria. Big like you, Zabiba.
Hang your head on the wall, and you'll be holy in Islam.
And I gotta because of people.
All right, now we're going into action with the blowing of the shofar. It's the most beautiful sound in the world. Take that, all you Muslims who think that the Adhan is this great sound. In your face. Whoa, you were kind of blasting it there, man. That was some Louis Armstrong stuff.
Alhamdulillah.
That was some Louis Armstrong stuff. All right, guys, so we're going to watch a video by... This actually got brought up. This got brought up yesterday. And what was her name? Sarah Irving-Stonebraker. I'm sorry, but that is the coolest. That Stonebreaker part is the coolest. Hey, Sarah, want to trade last names? That's what I'm saying.
That's not a real name. There's no way that's a real name.
Want to trade last names? I will gladly be David Stonebreaker, and you could be Sarah Irving Wood. I'll take Stonebreaker. We'll trade names. So anyway, Sarah Irving-Stonebraker is a historian. She grew up as an atheist, went to, I think, Cambridge and Oxford, encountered the brilliant and impressive and based, but really super cringe argumentation of the new atheists. People like Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens actually ended up causing her to do some investigation and ultimately become a Christian. Notice she didn't just hover around and say, I was wrong about this, so let me just hover in no man's land and call myself an agnostic. She didn't want to go that route. She wanted to be significantly more based, so she became a Christian. So we're going to check out that interview. That's with Justin Brierley, Premier. What is it? They have like 9 different sites with all Premier in it. But we'll check it out. Let me see. Take these first couple super chats. Did David fix his super chat like buttons? No, I could not figure it out. So if anyone has a video, you can't post links in the comments, but afterwards, if you guys know a video or instructions or article, tell me that you could give the title of it, but without the actual link, and then I can search for it because I would.
I actually looked it up when we were talking the other day, and I couldn't find any place of instructions for turning that on. Yep. Only instructions for turning super chats on, which made no sense to me. So is it just a feature that somehow is not enabled for some random
what I'm wondering.
people?
That's what I'm wondering, if it's just an experimental feature, and they try, because they'll do that. They'll roll out experimental features and they'll just have them on certain channels and stuff, and then they'll get the feedback before implementing them on all channels and so on. So
you should do that on all channels because it's a very good thing where people interact with each other. On the super chat, it's very nice.
Yeah, and when you don't have it, people that have experienced it like it, and then they complain when you don't have it, and they make fun of you and say that my channel is a loser's channel. It's a total loser's channel because I don't have that feature.
It is a big loser's channel.
Oh, Jack Ray said. Jack Ray responded to his own question, so he's like, "Did I fix that?" And then he said, "Nope." Ruslan claims to have ended the feud between you and Mike Winger. Is this true, and why is Ruslan a liar? Yeah, he actually asked me when we were live at the conference. He walked up to me, and so this was actually live streaming the conference for people who were watching it online. And I compared it to what Dr. Craig, William Lane Craig, was just speaking, and he was talking about the doctrines of justification and sanctification. Justification, you were declared. He compared it to like a legal ruling, like saying, okay, charges are dismissed against you and so on. But whereas sanctification, so that's like an instant thing, but sanctification is like changing over time and so on. So I pointed out that what happened with me and Winger, and that I was able to sit at a table with him for a few minutes without vomiting. It's like justification, but that there would still be a long process, because when you've done all the awful stuff and said all the awful stuff and been the terrible person that Mike Winger has been all these years, you can't just, that stuff just doesn't magically go away, right? It's going to take time.
I know that in the past he has been he's been following me as well, which is kind of always surprising to me when Christians that I have never interacted with follow me and make comments on my channel and all that. I'm like, what's going on here? I always thought he was a interesting, cool guy. Would love to talk to him sometime.
Yeah, then you found out the truth, that he's probably just stalking you and probably, trying to see how he can cause division down the road.
Sometimes I look out the window and I see somebody who looks kind of like him, but I'm still not sure if that's actually
Peeping
real.
Tom. Peeping Tom. Peeping Tom. They call him Peeping Mike. Peeping Mike Winger. AP, if you become a Christian, you should write a book called Seeking Allah, then Giving Up because you find out there is no Allah, then spending some time wondering if there's someone else, and then finding Jesus. That would be the dopest title ever.
That's a good title, man.
That'd be a banging title. You know what's funny? That would actually do well because of how funny it is.
Oh, wait, he follows me on Twitter as well. That's funny.
Who, Mike Winger?
No, Ruslan. I was talking about Ruslan, not the Wyke.
Oh, wait, you were talking about Ruslan? He's one of those guys who follows. Okay, yeah, no, Ruslan's cool. Ruslan's cool. I was talking about Mike Winger. Yeah, Ruslan's not trying to cause division, although he probably likes it because it helps his videos, and then he gets to say, I squashed the beef with Mike Winger and David Wood. Hey, have you seen the BB files that lefties are raving about?
Have you seen the BB files?
Is that about Netanyahu?
Files,
BB files?
I don't really know. There's some bunch of controversy about Benjamin Netanyahu and corruption and expose by people about it and so on. I haven't looked into it at all. I don't care, honestly. Because here's the thing:
AP doesn't care about corruption.
I'm sure there are political things and also personal things and also business things and also misdemeanors and maybe there is some corruption that Benjamin Netanyahu is engaged in and so on. These are internal matters in terms of politics. I don't really have to agree with Netanyahu's policies. I'm just supporting the guy right now because of his stance in the global geopolitical scene and how he has led the war effort so far and so on.
So in other words, if that is the most corrupt administration in the history of the world, you would still be in favor of them crushing Hamas. And so you would still be on their side in terms of crushing Hamas.
Yes.
Something along those lines?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be my my perspective. I always assume that there's some level of corruption for everyone, as in you probably aren't even going to get to power in certain cases without some level of corruption. It's just I'm just saying these are my thoughts. It's like, hey, if you're a politician, you actually manage to make things. You probably got all sorts of weird little deals and stuff going back and forth and so on. With that said, yeah, I would say I have no idea. He might be the least corrupt. He might be terribly corrupt. Don't know, but I hope he crushes Hamas and then answers for any corruption.
The thing is, I know that it's going to make some people angry here again, but the Trump administration was pretty corrupt as well. And I'm pretty sure that if the first administration was corrupt, the second administration would not be able to resist some corruption because it's part of the system.
Yeah.
I still vote.
Yeah. Again, I don't think. Matter of fact, that's what that film back in the day, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. He finds out you have no idea what you're getting into when you get into politics and so on. So again, some level of corruption. I'm sure there are administrations that are much better and administrations that are much worse and so on. But that's politics, ladies and gentlemen. That's why philosophers can't stand politicians, going all the way back to Socrates. Look what those politicians did. Shame on them. Are there super chats that let you call in? As currently, no, because I'm terrible with technology. But we will be upgrading. We will be upgrading here in the new year. Things will be changing quite a bit. It's Thanksgiving for me tomorrow. Where are you?
Not here.
Yeah, in America that would be Thursday. You have Thanksgiving somewhere else? Anyway, I don't know. It's Thanksgiving for me tomorrow. Wishing you both a happy Thanksgiving. Be safe, love God, and continue smashing Islam. We will humiliate Islam.
Thank you.
Hello, I wanted to ask if God is real, what is the best way I can get closer to him? P.S. What is your opinion on the works of H.P. Lovecraft?
What?
Have
Uh,
what?
what does that have to do with the rest of the question? But I guess it says PS. So
No idea.
okay.
No opinion on the works of H.P. Lovecraft. As far as getting closer to God, believe in Jesus and start reading the Bible. I'd start with the Gospel of Mark, just because it's the shortest and it's very action. It's action oriented. Jesus went here and did this. Jesus went here and did that, and you get an outline of what Jesus did. And then one of the other Gospels, maybe the Gospel of John, because Luke and Matthew cover a lot of the same material that Mark covers. So Gospel of John, then the book of Acts, then the book of Romans. And that's how you get started.
That's funny. That's funny. Don't you find it interesting? Isn't it a big coincidence that when you say God is real, it sounds like God is real?
These are the deep musings, the deep thoughts of the Apostate Prophet, ladies and gentlemen. And fortunately for us, we're here when he shares them with the world.
As, for Lovecraft, H.P. Lovecraft, it's actually a genre of that is attributed to him, Lovecraftian horror, that I always find incredibly interesting. And it's kind of the element of on his story, on his whole idea of the Call of Cthulhu, which is a horror where apparently there is some huge cosmic scary thing out there against which the narrators or the protagonists stand no chance and feel complete despair. It's like it's some really messed up kind of horror, some really messed up kind of psychological horror, which I always like. And I also read a little bit of his Call of Cthulhu stuff, and I also just realized that it says Call of Ghidorah in the username, so I guess that makes sense.
I just looked up a couple days ago. I looked up a movie trailer. It was called "Speak No Evil."
Oh,
and because I saw the trailer, and I was like, what's this about? And so I looked it up, and then sometimes I'll want to know what happens, but not enough to actually see the movie. So I'll just read the description on Wikipedia after I decided I'm not going to go see the movie. Anyway, that's a remake of some like Danish film. That's like a year
I watched
or two.
the original. I watched the original. You should watch that.
Yeah, that was earlier. But they like give it the American version. They give it an ending where the bad guys lose, and apparently spoiler alert, close your ears now if you're going to watch the Danish version or the American version. I already kind of but anyway, in the other version, the bad guys win, and then the guy who wrote the movie and stuff like that, he's complaining like, why do Americans need this happy ending? Like, what's wrong with you? You have to have this. Why? It's not So apparently, I mean, it is interesting, like culturally, like in other places, you can just, like, it is shocking in an American movie when you get to the end, it's like, nope, bad guys all won and good guys all lost. Like, what happened here? There's something completely wrong. Whereas seems to be more acceptable in European films.
In the Western and Northern European ways, that's what they do. I watched the original movie. I watched the Danish movie, and I thought to myself, I watched it as my wife fell asleep, as Mrs. Apostate fell asleep, and I thought to myself, I'm glad that she's asleep and that she didn't watch this with me, because she would probably complain that this is completely messed up and that she just feels terrible after watching the movie. I thought it was a really messed up movie. And I thought, what the hell, man? Sorry. Would suggest watching it if you're interested in some really messed up horror. Psychological horror. Wild. Hey, what is this? Here we go.
Late, has AP started reciting speeches from his favorite Austrian painter yet? He quoted multiple full speeches. Yeah. My brother and I are baptized Protestants, but he has been doing research and saying that faith alone doesn't save. Do you have any advice? Well, it does, according to Paul. You have distinctions, because in James, the book of James, he points out, basically can faith save him if you have no works? And the harmonization is that if you have a kind of faith that has no works associated with it, do you actually have any sort of saving faith? But Paul's pretty clear. Paul's pretty clear on the idea that it's not your works that save you. Let's see. The game Smash Brothers gives a whole new meaning to Momo and Dehya. Bad jokes aside, what is your favorite scripture? The Bible. If you're asking favorite book of the Bible, I don't know. Or do you mean like favorite passage? My favorite passage is at the beginning of 1 Timothy, where Paul says that I thank Christ Jesus, my Lord, who has given me strength, that he considered me faithful, appointing me to his service. And he talks about even though he was once a violent man and a blasphemer and so on, that he was shown mercy. I like that passage. Books, I don't know, I like the book of Acts, some of that stuff.
I like Ecclesiastes.
Yeah, that's been your same position even when you're an atheist. Grow. You need to evolve. People grow. You just stay the same forever. What?
It's funny because I listened to it and read it when I was an atheist multiple times, many times. By now I have, I guess, read the Psalms twice, and I find them quite interesting. But I'm currently going through the Bible from the beginning, and I just finished Genesis. So
nice. Sets the stage. Yeah, I read a little bit of Ecclesiastes when I was still an atheist because it appeared in. It was a George Orwell essay. I think it was Politics in the English Language. Was that Orwell? I'm trying to think. Was Orwell Politics in the English Language? Anyway, he quotes a passage from Ecclesiastes. And then he says, but here's how a modern politician would say it. And it's a bunch of gibberish where it's saying the same thing, but it's saying it in the most ridiculous way you could possibly say anything. And so on. He's comparing it. And so anyway, that was my first glimpse of Ecclesiastes. And I read it like probably shortly after I became a Christian.
That's what they do.
Cool stuff, because a lot of that thinking was still in my head.
That's what they do.
Hey, I haven't been keeping up too closely, but is AP a brother in Christ yet, or do I need to keep praying?
That's what they do.
Elliot, keep praying. When we call them mule-brained agnostics, it's not just, making fun of them for having the brains of mules. What are mules? They're stubborn.
That's what they do.
They're stubborn. You should have Testify Apologetics on for a stream. He makes quality short-form apologetic content and is currently tackling Islam. Hey, go ahead and, if you watch Testify, go ahead and message him and tell him, yep, he can come on anytime he wants.
That's what they do.
This stream is only strengthening my iman. That's what we do. That's by
Jeez, look at the view count.
What?
Testify. Popular videos lately, 156,000 views on one of the question no Muslim can answer, 300,000 views on the sad status of women according to Islam, and so on.
Nice.
That's interesting.
Nice.
What's funny, he used a meme face of Muslims that I created and that somehow spread online.
Ooh.
And nobody knows that I did it.
He's testifying. He's testifying. AP is testifying against Testify. Testify has stolen his stuff. It is, by the way, it is cool that you have all these like Christian apologetics channels and they're getting into dealing with Islamic stuff. Because again, ladies and gentlemen, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, going after Islam was a lonely, sad, lonely world. And now, woo! What's that, your hero that a sociologist said? Woohoo! 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 Let me slide back in my chair. This will impress my viewers. Did Momo play with Dehya's large muswak? What's wrong with you people? Got AP's fans over here trying to stir up weird images. The reason why James and Paul disagree on justification is that one of them was a Muslim. Can't argue with that. Powerful, yes. Although you have to say which one would be a Muslim, because Jesus' original disciples were, according to the Quran, were both devout. We're all devout Muslims, but both James and Paul did not believe in Jesus while he was alive. They both believed in him after his resurrection and after resurrection appearances.
That's what they do.
Let's see. Where'd that go? Are people keep sending in chats? I wanted to get in this video. Oh, no. What the heck? Okay, yeah, we got a couple more. All right, take these last couple, and then we'll jump into the video. As an ex-atheist, I never believed in evolution as I thought it... You never believed in evolution even though you were an atheist? That would kind of, like, it's kind of the only game in town. You have to get to how you got to life and the variety of forms of life we see around us. As an ex-atheist, I never believed in evolution as I thought it was stupid and impossible. I realized I can't be an atheist and stay smart, I believe.
Well, you can also believe in the great baker. So. You can also believe in the great baker that baked everyone.
That's true. That's true. Let's see. May AP move from stubborn to reborn.
Smart.
AP, that's what we call a play on words.
Yes.
More harshness on Islam. Love you both. AP committed to Miss AP. God is working on AP baby steps. Yep.
Alhamdulillah.
That's the best you can hope for with agnostics. Baby steps, because they think like babies. Last night I had a dream. AP is chasing me with a knife.
that was not a dream, man.
that was real life.
That was not a dream.
That was real life. Intense debate with Catholic apologists when? I don't think you'll ever see me in an intense debate with Catholic apologists. You'll have to go to, you get Anthony to do that, Anthony Rogers or someone like that. Vocab would probably do that. I have zero interest in that.
As far as I can tell from your responses and your statements in the past in response to people saying different things about different practices, you don't really have that big of a problem with I don't know, Catholic theology or Orthodox theology or practices and things like that. Although you don't agree with them, you don't really have that massive of a problem with them, right?
Yeah, I've given examples like, okay, here's something I don't believe in, but I can see it. I can kind of see why you believe it and stuff. But it's just another issue where. Hey, I'm following the Bible. Some of you other guys who have disagreements about various things, you can settle it. You can settle it, but not everyone can do anything. And I'm kind of dealing with a couple of big issues. I got Islam and I got atheism. Let's see. David, I have a feeling that Pakistanis secretly love you. They do. Even if they yell and scream at you, they cannot stay angry at you for a long time. They do. They all love me. And that's why they have to block my videos in Pakistan, because as soon as Pakistanis see me, they realize they love me. AP, should speak to YouTuber Radar Apologetics. He's a Messianic Jew who believes in Jesus. He knows the Jewish sources very well and can show Jesus is the Messiah without the New Testament, AP.
Thank you.
Hey, that would be like Apollos in the book of Acts, who said that he was accurately presenting the gospel, but he basically knew the Old Testament scriptures, but he was talking accurately about Jesus without knowing Jesus. And finally here, sorry, but I'll trust the science over two YouTubers. Hey, D. Wood, if your Sky Daddy is real, why is Mike Winger's channel bigger than yours? Huh? Destroyed.
That's good.
Well, the fact is, you can make terrible crap videos, and the world is filled with people who will follow that nonsense. I mean, think about this. I can make a channel right now where it's just me getting kicked in the balls every day, and the channel probably do well just because people go kicked in the balls, right? So you can have a channel with total nonsense that's got no real point to it, and have it do well. And that's basically Mike Winger.
I'm pretty sure that's actually a fetish that people are into. So.
Oh, yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and jump into this video. AP's about to be humiliated by the breaker of stones, Sarah Irving-Stonebraker. Let's check this out.
Good to be joined by Sarah Irving-Stonebraker now to talk about her journey.
It is Stonebraker. I was wondering if it's something like Stonebraker or something like that, but no.
From Atheism to Christian.
Hey, anyone in Australia? Is that like a common Australian name? She's Australian. Just wanted to know. Or is that just people in different parts of the world have it? I'm not familiar with Stonebraker. That's just cool. AP still thinks it's too cool to be real and it must be fake.
Yeah, I'm looking it up to just make sure it's fake.
It's not fake.
In faith, and some of the influential figures along the way, including some of the new atheists who were part of that journey. Sarah is a historian and author of the book Priests of History, Stewarding the Past in an Ahistoric Age, as well as a contributor to the book Coming to Faith through Dawkins. Sarah, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks, Richard.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Justin.
Tell us a little bit about your background growing up and so on, because I don't think you were raised in a particularly religious household at all, were you?
Little side note, he mentioned 2 books. One is a book by her, Priests of History, and the other is a compilation of various people who, after encountering the works of the new atheists and then deciding to look deeper, ultimately became Christians. Anyway, for anyone who wants those books, I don't know who's nerdy enough to still read when you could just watch videos. But for those of you who still read books, I put the links to those in the description box if you want copies of those. So,
Priests of History.
You
know. I know that.
Huh?
I made a note of it. Let's see.
You're not gonna. You don't read books, man. Come on. that might fly with some other people, but come on, AP.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Not at all. So I'm Australian, and I was brought up in a really loving family in the city of Sydney, which is a very cosmopolitan, global city. And I was brought up by parents who were very academic. My father is or was a professor of government at the University of Sydney, and they always encouraged us to really pursue ideas, to seek after the truth and to grapple with the big questions.
In Australia?
But it was a completely secular household, actually. And so while we were doing this and having all kinds of wonderful conversations around the meal times and the dinner table, as it were, it was a secular childhood. And so I really didn't encounter Christianity in any real way, to be honest, until I came to study at the University of Cambridge as a postgraduate student.
It's funny. I've heard that from Australians that Australia is very secular. Australia is very secular. Like there are Australians who come to America and they're like shocked by how Christian it is. But at the same time, we all grew up, people who are my age all grew up watching Crocodile Dundee. So we think of Australians as like running around through the bush, as they call it. They don't say woods or forest or anything like that. And fighting alligators and poaching kangaroos and stuff like that. So it's interesting. It's like, oh, and they encourage the pursuit of ideas and going to school in Oxford and Cambridge and say, what? Australia?
Well, first of all, I have to point one thing out, which is that anyone who comes from any Western country to America will be shocked at how religious America is.
Isn't that weird? Like in America, you're like, everything's falling apart, and everyone else is like, oh my goodness, it's so Christian here.
Yeah.
I was doing my PhD.
You actually had a desire to go to Cambridge from quite an early age. Tell us about where that came from.
Yes. Well, gosh, how could you not? So when I was young, I wanted to be a historian since I was 8 years old. And part of that, I think, was because my father's a historian and we went on this very formative trip to England when I was 8. And we went to Oxford and Cambridge and we went to Warwick Castle. And the past, I think, captured my imagination. And so from then on, I wanted to study at Oxford and Cambridge, and I wanted to be more importantly, I wanted to be a historian. And that really gave me a sense of, I think, who I was in life and really what life was all about for me. And I think actually when I reflect upon it, in many ways, that sense that I knew what life was all about, I knew who I was, I think contributed quite early on to a sense when I was a child and a teenager that I didn't need God, because I sort of thought that I didn't have any kind of searching questions that God might be able to answer, as kind of naive and arrogant as that sounds.
No, that makes sense. Okay, so where are you going to go to learn about what you are and your place in the world and so on? You're gonna go to Oxford, or you're gonna go to Cambridge or something like this. You're gonna get the best information, and you're gonna figure this out. Why are you gonna go to God in all this? So no, that's not terribly strange. It makes sense to think like that, but eventually, you know, it was it was Thomas Reid, who's a Scottish philosopher. Not a lot of Scottish philosophers down through history, but anyway, Thomas Reid, Scottish philosopher.
Why are you bashing Scottish people, man?
Well, they're just not known for their contributions to philosophy. Let's put it that way. Contributions to drinking whiskey? Yeah, maybe. But Thomas Reid said that you may be going along on a path and think that you're on a good road. And other people may be following you down this path thinking that you're on a good road. But if all of a sudden you find yourself in a coal pit, you might want to rethink whether you're on the right path and so on. And it's kind of he's talking about, you know, philosophical ideas like skepticism and so on. And you absorb some of these ideas and think, wow, this is really great and stuff. And all of a sudden you're stuck in a coal pit. It's like, oh, maybe I wasn't on the good path that I thought I was on. But I think that's what's going on with a lot of people right now. It's, I've got this figured out. I'm on the right path. Oh yeah, Dawkins, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, what am I doing in this giant coal pit? Then I'm stuck in here. And then you got to figure out how to get out.
Because I had this sense that I know what my life is all about. I know who I am. I know where I'm going, and so forth.
When you arrived at Cambridge as a postgraduate, was it postgraduate that you arrived to do studies for?
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
PhD in history.
Would you have kind of described yourself as an atheist at that point, or was it something you didn't really think that hard about?
Oh, yes. I definitely thought of myself as an atheist. And this was partly because I think growing up in that very cosmopolitan city like Sydney, and also somebody for whom academic pursuits were very important, thinking about atheism and defining oneself as a sort of critic of religion seemed to be particularly important to me. So yes, I saw myself as an atheist. And actually some of my first encounters with Christianity actually happened at Cambridge, and they actually happened through encountering the very people that I was studying for my PhD thesis, which is really interesting. So one of the things that I assumed as an atheist and never really delved into was this idea that Christianity was in some kind of fundamental opposition with science. And I began doing my PhD, and I was really exploring quite deeply. We'd now probably use the term scientist to describe people like Francis Bacon and Robert Boyle, one of the founders, in Boyle's case, of modern chemistry. But they were natural philosophers of nature. And I was really interested, I was a historian of empire, and really interested in the relationship between the history of science, the history of empire. And yet it soon became apparent that not only did these, Boyle and Bacon in particular, but also others, Isaac Newton, take their faith very seriously, but also that their Christian faith was really at the very core of what they were doing. And so what I had dismissed, to be honest, as intellectual window dressing was actually, the more I read, for example, of Robert Boyle, the more I found him a man of deep Christian faith.
That's true.
It is interesting to me that
that's what they do. Anyone
who actually studies the history of science, and so she's a historian, and she was studying the history of science. She had assumed basically the warfare thesis or the conflict model of what's the relationship between science and religion, or between science and Christianity. The dominant view at the scholarly level is called the complexity model, or the complexity thesis, meaning it's a complicated relationship. Sometimes it's like the church and so on that's funding the scientific research. Other times, you've got the Galileo affair and so on. So anyway, it's a complicated issue. The dominant view among the new atheists and sort of at a popular level among lots of atheists is the warfare model that science and Christianity have been in a state of warfare, and then science started winning and so on. No one at the scholarly level takes that seriously. No one. And that's why it's this interesting. That's why it's interesting to me, because you have all these young atheists and they claim to be the champions of reason and so on, but they'll adopt a position that would get you laughed out of the room at the scholarly level. It's similar with Jesus mythers. Jesus mythicism is popular among lots of atheists. At the scholarly level, we've seen in the past what like Bart Ehrman thinks. He says no one at my level, no one at the scholarly level takes you guys seriously on this. And so it's just interesting that you have all these like young atheists who've never studied history, they've never studied science, they have no concept of historical Jesus studies or New Testament studies. They see some stuff in memes and a couple of videos, and they view themselves as the champions of reason when they're completely at odds with what scholars would say, even atheists and agnostic scholars who actually know their fields. And it is interesting how you can sort of be duped into thinking that you're the champion of reason and evidence and logic and so on, when you wouldn't make it through 3 days in a class with an actual scholar, because you'd be laughed out of the room. How's that make you feel, atheists? I'm talking about you new atheists. What are you saying?
They love science and reason and logic. That's why they would never be offended by this kind of stuff anyway.
Yeah. I will destroy you, David. How dare you, religious tard. You're a religious tard. You're a religious tard. I hope the Muslims get you. I hope the Muslims get you for this.
Your Sky Daddy can't save you.
Sky Daddy.
Reason and logic and science. You see?
What is this woman saying? She's saying, oh, she needed a Sky Daddy. That's all she's saying. Just like all those scientists. Oh, boy. Fun stuff.
And this was a kind of pebble in my shoe, as it were. It made me... It was a kind of stumbling block to my atheism. It by no means made me a Christian right then and there or anything, but it made me really need to take seriously this idea that one could be a deep intellect committed to what then is the foundation of modern science, and yet also a deeply theological thinker and a profoundly committed Christian, in Boyle's case in particular.
Yeah, so this at least, as you say, put a pebble in your shoe, made you realise that the situation wasn't quite as simple as you perhaps understood. How did things progress then?
Oh, I just wanted to point out, just for a parallel, because something similar happened to me, although it was in a completely different area. So she's basically saying, hey, growing up and hearing things and so on, this was the view I had, and I thought this was the correct view. Until I started studying and I realized that view actually does not line up with the evidence. And therefore I have a problem, and it's something that starts bothering you. That's what you call a pebble in your shoe. You're walking around, but there's something that's bothering you. With me, it was that I thought, it was on some scientific issues like, oh, I thought that science explained all these things. And then I found out, no, actually, there's some areas here where it's not working out very well for just a straightforward scientific explanation. But also with Jesus and me thinking that I had explained Christianity successfully in my mind, that, oh, these guys, their guy died, your guy died, Jesus died, you believe he's the Messiah, you want to keep things going, so let's make up a story about him rising from the dead and so on. And then me finding out that actually doesn't work. And then, something starts bothering you. That should happen over and over again, ladies and gentlemen. If you're an atheist, there should be all sorts of things that are bothering you right now, including the fact that the new atheist insisted 20 years ago that, hey, if we just get millions of people becoming atheists, the world will become a better place. Look around you. Your predictions have failed. Now give it up. Stop embarrassing yourself.
It happened when I was in the military, and we went on a long hike. It happened, and it got really annoying because I had boots on,
Are you talking about a pebble in your shoe?
Yeah.
And it was extra hard because he had boots on, and they're harder to take off.
Yeah.
Thank you for that valuable and significant commentary, AP.
You're welcome. No problem.
Now to a much less serious thinker and breaker of stones.
Because you were obviously in a very intellectual setting at Cambridge University. You were dealing with big ideas. That's the idea when you're at university. What were some of the other ideas that were being brought up alongside this study of these scientific pioneers and so on?
Yes. Well, I think really the next kind of major thing that happened for me was that after I finished my PhD, I was elected to a junior research fellowship at the University of Oxford. And when I was at Oxford, Professor Peter Singer, who's one of the world's leading ethicists and philosophers, came to Oxford to give a series of lectures in ethics, the You a Hero lectures.
Peter Singer, guys, he's very interesting. So he's always in compilations on ethics and so on. He's always cited. Many people are horrified by the things that he says, but to his credit, he kind of says, okay, we're dismissing all this God and religion stuff. What are we left with? And tries to formulate his ethics based on just rejection of God, rejection of what religion would say human beings are, and so on. What are you left with if you're actually an atheist, a naturalist, and so on? Form your ethics out of that. And people are very frequently horrified at what he says. He says some really, really creepy stuff. But to his credit, he's actually just going to the obvious conclusion of that worldview. What you find lots of atheists doing, like Richard Dawkins and all these guys, is they'll say that there's no foundation for various ethical claims and so on, but then they'll just continue making ethical claims as if they didn't just dismiss it all. And there's something deeply incoherent about that. And so you got guys like Peter Singer and so on who, nope, we'll build our ethics on a foundation that has nothing to do with the impact of religion on the world, and you get some wild stuff. But we'll see what she says here. What are you humming about?
Nothing. Just
Good.
listening.
And I was, very much an atheist, but some of my friends were going to Singer's lectures, and I was really excited, of course, to go along too. Not the least bit excited too, because of course Singer is a fellow Australian. He was at Princeton at the time, but it was great to hear his Australian accent in the halls of Oxford. And the interesting thing is, so Singer's lectures were about, in a nutshell, they're really about our duties to others, and really grappled more deeply with the question, the kind of foundational question there, which is the value of human life. Because Singer, of course, being a utilitarian and also an atheist, actually pursues atheism in many ways to its kind of logical conclusion when it comes to grappling with this issue of, well, to what extent is human life inherently valuable? Singer says, well, no, there's no inherent value to human life. That's something of a kind of religious myth, a Christian fiction, which is actually entirely consistent with atheism, because the ultimate reality is not in any way spiritual if you're an atheist. And
I just wanted to point out, because she's not giving like examples and so on. And I didn't give examples, but guys, think about questions like, what's more valuable, a disabled human or a fully healthy elephant or something like that? Most people would say the human being, even if he's got problems and so on. If you took away a religious foundation, do you get that same answer? What should you eat? What should you eat? Should you kill that animal and eat that animal, or eat that human being who just died?
Yes.
Most people wouldn't want to eat the human being. Why? Because you have an idea of what human beings are that has been influenced by religion. And so if you take that away and you can actually get that out of your head, why not eat the human being that's already dead? You're not hurting the human being. Why not use that as food versus the animal which you have to kill? So these are the kinds of issues that come up in Singer's work.
I think it shouldn't even be controversial, to argue or to explain or to say. And some people really take this as a very bad thing among atheists themselves. When you point out, sorry, I just opened something which really strains the computer. When you point out
Get a
that,
new computer, dirtbag. Hey,
that,
you need a new computer.
that when you talk about the value of life, if you are an atheist and you're consistent with your atheism and you don't believe that there is a God, and you don't believe that there is an ultimate, inherent, universal, I don't know, lawmaker or whatever it is, that everything abides by, that everything depends on, that everyone listens to. If you agree that there is no such thing, and you don't believe in a consciousness higher than this, or where that everything originates from, then you can't really argue that there is inherent value to human life. You can't really argue that there is inherent value to your own life. You can't really argue that there is an inherent meaning to life. It's all. I mean, you could argue it. You just wouldn't really get anywhere. It would sound kind of incoherent, and there would be too many holes in the narrative. So you have to conclude that it is inherently meaningless. Does that mean that it is therefore altogether meaningless? No, you can establish meaning subjectively afterward, but again, that is all on very, very shaky grounds. But it shouldn't be controversial to say that inherently, in an atheistic worldview, there is no meaning to anything at all.
Yeah, and you just said shouldn't be very controversial, and yet it is. Atheists tend to flip out when you bring this up, right? And you say, hey, things are actually ultimately meaningless if you're right, and so on. They, what? How dare you? And they flip out and lose their mind. You can't. And when you say, hey, there's no real right and wrong. Things can be beneficial or not beneficial. Things can contribute to human flourishing or decrease human flourishing, and so on. There can be things like that, but it's the is-ought fallacy. When you say, hey, here's how I do things, or here's how our species do things, that is completely different from a moral obligation. You have a moral obligation to do this thing. But what you find is the is-ought fallacy is just completely standard among lots of atheists. It's, but this helps our species. Okay, how are you getting this helps your species? Do you have a moral obligation to do this? Like where are you getting that ought? What you could say is, it would be hypothetical. You'd say, if you want to help your species or something like that flourish, then you need to do this. Or that human beings just naturally tend to do things that help them flourish, just as a rat does things that help it flourish. That's different from what a rat does is what it's programmed to do. It's not doing it because it has moral obligations and so on. So where are you getting these moral obligations that you ought to do this? And if you don't, there's something wrong with you and you're bad or something like that. Where are you getting this? Not a lot of options available to you in atheism. So AP is right that, and by the way, this is why I find it interesting. So you have Peter Singer, and he's figuring out ethics from an atheistic perspective, which is what I was doing when I was young. But it was all I was doing was just, okay, you told me I can't do this and I'm not supposed to do this, but why? Like, people would tell me something and then I would do it for a while. And then, but I'm always thinking, like, why? Why am I not supposed to do this? Because you told me? Is there some other reason besides you telling me? Oh, society says that? Okay, am I missing something? Am I supposed to do anything society tells me? Is that the only basis? And then ended up in prison. Fortunately, this woman took a better course.
There is a thing. I did at the peak of my atheism. I subscribed for years to this idea, and
keep in mind, everyone, when you refer to the peak of your atheism, it's actually like the abyss of your atheism. It's everything, because everything is opposite in atheism. But go ahead. Sorry about that. Just wanted to point that out.
I subscribe to that idea and acknowledgement, actually, to be more accurate, for many years, because I thought there is just no other way, that everything is inherently meaningless, that life is inherently meaningless, that morals are inherently meaningless, that there are no moral obligations, and I also held on to the idea, and I explained this in a video like 4 years ago or so, and have consistently held on to that, which is that I do not think that anything at all is naturally and inherently, that we are inherently obligated to do anything at all, or that we are obligated to stay away from certain things inherently. So I could not possibly, in an atheistic worldview, argue that I don't know, causing mass murder is of course bad. Therefore, we would of course be obligated not to do that. Yes, it would be in our best interest not to do it, and it would be destructive to do it, and that would be contrary to human flourishing, and it would be contrary to the things that you value. And you can argue all that. You can, however, not conclude that it is inherently, I don't know, prescribed, and that there is such an obligation that all humans share. It very much depends on whether you want to be part of society or not. If you end up no longer believing that you want to be a functioning part of society, and you also don't care about the rest of humanity anymore, it will be totally. There is nothing in the universe, in an atheistic worldview, that says you shall not go out there and cause a massacre. Does that now mean that is okay? No. This is specifically why people, according to the atheistic worldview, if you want to find meaning, why people would establish moral systems in order to then establish functioning societies and go with utilitarianism, for example, or as Mohammed Hijab calls it, utilitarianism, to find a system that will make things function better.
Yeah, so and that's kind of what you're left with. And so, to be clear, you can have a functioning system that is based on ideas about what works if you are trying to achieve certain goals and so on. What works, what helps establish functioning societies and so on. What at the end of the day, it's just all hypothetical. If you, as you pointed out, if you want to be a normal member of society, then here are things you have to do. But there's no moral obligation to want those things or to want that. And so what you can also do is, hey, if anyone is not on the same page and they don't want these same things, then we lock those people up or something like that. So you could do all these things. But we've had experiences for a while of those systems, and those systems seem to break down, and they seem to be weak and easy to manipulate when something like, let's say, something like Islam comes along, and it's, we will subjugate you in the name of Allah, and you're, that doesn't contribute to human flourishing and stuff like that. And then people can use the lack of foundation against you. It becomes kind of easier to give you kind of an idol, like a moral idol, like here's what you should do. Anyway.
So I actually left Singer's lectures with a kind of intellectual vertigo, as it were, because I was still an atheist, and yet here was the kind of the leading atheist ethicist of the time, and he was arguing positions which were completely at odds with assumptions that I had kind of not really thought through, to be honest, but had always just assumed were entirely consistent with my atheism. The main one, of course, is this idea that, well, every human life is of equal moral worth and inherently precious and valuable. I'd always thought that was simply the case, and I'd also...
Yeah, Singer would take that as complete nonsense. There's no even like possible basis for concluding that from atheism.
You can possibly justify that.
You need something coming from beyond to say that human beings all have this this equal, that the human beings are equal in some way. Like if you're gonna say two human beings are equal, what in the world are you talking about? Equal in height, equal in weight, equal in, what are you talking about? One of those two people is going to be smarter than the other, or something like that. In what sense are they equal? There's really nothing in atheism to give you that. But it's interesting. And by the way, look, side note, ladies and gentlemen, so she's arguing that she has, basically her thinking, and she's finding out that atheism does not line up with her thinking. Now, what you could say, if you were an atheist and you wanted to defend atheism here, was that her thinking had been influenced by Christianity. And therefore, when she looks into atheist foundations for certain ideas, well, some of her ideas had been inherited from Christianity. And so she's looking for an atheistic foundation for ideas that are part of Christianity. And you could say that, well, maybe she should have just rejected those ideas or something like that. But if you actually think that your views and your values are more correct than the atheist who's screaming "Sky Daddy" over here would have you believe, and so on,
Sky Daddy.
Then what you'd say is, no, I really believe these things, and therefore there has to be some way to ground them. If atheism can't ground them, then so much for atheism. I need something else that can ground them.
Well, we've really kind of assumed that...
You should make a Sky Daddy song, since you're into all this.
Sky Daddy, Sky Daddy.
Oh, yeah,
Sky Daddy!
that was something that all reasonable people would agree upon. And yet it's very clear from Singer's work, and I went away from those lectures and read more about Singer and read all Singer's work.
Just to think about it for a second, seriously, you could, if somebody ever argues that, of course, we don't discriminate, we don't do this, we don't do that, all humans are of equal worth, and so on. If somebody argued that, if you wanted to, you could sit down and give, assuming that this is coming from a secular source, the statement, you could sit down and ask the question, why? Why do you think that? What do you base that on? Who said? Mm-hmm. Who said that? Who said all humans are equal? Who said all are of equal worth? Who said all are inherently equal, and so on? You could argue that, and it has to come down to something that everyone can agree on, and you can't really explain it unless you want to make people appeal to God, for example.
And you could reject those claims in the exact same way you reject claims about God, right? So what do atheists say? You just heard that. You heard about God from your parents, and you believe them because you believed what you're told, and so on. And you could say the exact same thing about various values. Do not murder. Where are you getting that? Your parents told you that stuff. Your parents told your parents and your society told you to believe certain things about right and wrong. And okay, well, guess what? You can reject that for the same reasons you would reject belief in God. I don't. Where is this moral value? Prove it. Prove to me. Okay, we won't say Sky Daddy, but prove your sky ethics, your ethics that we're all under, and we're supposed to obey this. You can use the same reasoning to reject that sort of thing.
Sky Daddy.
Sky Daddy.
That is, of course, not a position which is sustained by atheism whatsoever. And so this really, in many ways, was a kind of turning point in the sense that it made me rethink whether or not atheism could actually sustain my deepest ethical convictions.
Wow. So you were being prompted to think about these issues really for the first time by an atheist philosopher, Peter Singer, in this case. And Singer himself, I think, was willing to acknowledge that where that value you held about the inherent dignity and equality of all life was essentially a religious view. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's exactly right. What he says. In fact.
Hey, look at this. Mugiwara, you need your parents to tell you not to kill. Try and follow an argument instead of making fun of it, because you sound like a dope when you don't get the simple point. You've got a baby. If you raise that baby to be a homicidal maniac and to think that killing is fine, and you cheer for the baby whenever when he's getting older and he starts with killing bugs and killing worms and so on, and then you encourage him to kill people and so on, that's going to be a very different sort of baby than if you raise the baby to not do that sort of thing. We're talking about where do you get your basic ideas about right and wrong? You're raised to believe those things. You're raised to believe those things. Your introduction to ethics you get from your parents. And so, do not kill. Where are you getting this from? Here's the thing, and this got brought up by Jordan Peterson. You've got all these guys like Mugiwara here who thinks it's just innate. We think we will not kill. Where in the name of common sense did you think that that's what human beings do? It took a long, long, long part of human history to get people to think, oh, that guy's from a different group, but I shouldn't kill him anyway. You're not just born with this. You're not just born with the idea that I'm not going to kill things. You're not born with it. So the question is, where are you getting it? We know where people get these ideas from. The most direct source for a kid who's growing up is like his parents and his school and his friends and so on. That's where you're getting it. Your surrounding culture is telling you these are the things that are acceptable. What we're talking about now is what is the real foundation? Is it just this is what your parents told? Is that all the foundation? If it is, then do you have any sort of moral obligation to follow that sort of thing? If your society tells you something, do you have a real moral obligation to follow that? What if your society told you we're gonna toss Jews in ovens? Would you say, oh, well, I have to obey that because that my society is saying it's right? So what we're saying is the exact same sort of atheist response is, you just believe in God because your parents told you to believe in God. Well, your parents telling you to believe in God does not mean that's a version of the genetic fallacy, right? If you say your parents told you to believe in God and that's the source of your belief, therefore belief in God is false, that would be the genetic fallacy. No, your parent, I learned my ABCs from people around me. It doesn't mean that learning or pretty much anything, mathematics or something like that. You learned that, people taught you that. It doesn't mean that it's true or false or anything else. So if you're going to say, hey, you're just taught this and you got the idea about God because you're raised in a Christian environment, great. You got the idea about lots of your ethical views just because of the environment you're in. And so if that's a reason to dismiss belief in God, that would also be a reason to dismiss your views of ethics. But what you find is atheists will dismiss the view of God, but then they won't toss out their ethics. She's pointing out that Peter Singer is actually more consistent. He tries to throw out a lot of what society would say about ethics because he understands where it actually came from. And it didn't come from atheism. We lost AP, who's having computer problems. Hey, we need someone who's connected to AP. I'm talking to you, Mrs. Apostate, to put up a fundraiser. Put up a fundraiser. Here's what AP needs for a computer that doesn't do this regularly. I'll do the rest. Just make the fundraiser. I'll tell people, hey, here's how we can all just chip in a few bucks each and get AP. A tricked out system so he'd stop being a complete embarrassment to live streams. I don't even know when he's coming back. Hey, wouldn't it be funny if AP's feelings were all hurt because I made fun of agnostics? He's back.
Woo!
Some people were thinking that your feelings were hurt by all this, and that's why you dipped out.
Yeah, but I got it myself, and I thought, come on, I have to sit through this.
Yeah.
I can't just give up.
Let's take a couple super chats here since we're kind of in the middle of something before we start playing again. Good argument here. If God exists, Mike Winger wouldn't be a nerd. 2, Mike Winger is the king of the nerds. 3, therefore God does not exist. I'm an atheist now.
That's quite solid, actually.
Yeah, you have to work on that first premise. If God exists, Mike Winger wouldn't be a nerd. That's not a that's not a true premise.
Disprove it then.
God could want someone like Mike Winger to show us all what not to be like.
False.
That's called a theodicy. A deep thought for AP. Jerusalem, Jew or Islam? That is AP's like thinking, look at this. How could this be?
This is a miracle.
Oh, hey, this is a cool comment. Peter Henderson says all Australians were originally stonebreakers, convicts. Yep, they were all in this. They were sent there on the chain gang to break rocks.
That's pretty racist.
Breaking rocks in the hot sun. I fought the law and the law won, and they sent me to Australia to cuddle a kangaroo. Do you think academia will flip to Christianity? I think it will. I think it's going to be more accepting of Christianity in the near future. I wouldn't say like flipping to Christianity. I would say that
I don't know about that.
I would say that a lot of the hostility over the past 2 decades is going to diminish, and that it's going to be more acceptable. The Virgin Conservative Commentator. People who play video games are man-children. The Chad Christian Apologist. What's up, gamers for Christ?
That's funny.
The best Scottish philosopher is Hume.
Oh yeah, you didn't think about Hume. What? He was Scottish. You said there was not a single Scottish philosopher in the history.
I did not say that. I said
Pretty sure that's exactly what you
I said Scottish. I said Scotland, not known for their philosophers, and that's true. You know what's interesting? You know what's more interesting about Hume is that there haven't been a lot of fat philosophers. What?
And what's your point?
I'm just saying, like Hume is one of the, like, I'm trying to think of every fat philosopher who's ever existed. There's Hume, and then I think Aquinas later became fat. And then there was me. But I'm getting shredded. So the best Scottish philosopher is Hume? No. Thomas Reid's better and more based. No, to be fair, Hume is awesome. That's one of the guys like Plato where you can say all these things and I can disagree with a ton of what you're saying, but still respect how you're arguing for it and so on.
I can't respect anyone who still plays with Plato when they're an adult.
That's true. Please read Revelation 13 to 18, and keep in mind Neuralink 666 in Greek. No, well, anyone who's interested in this can do it here. You're going to get the microchip mark of the beast, the Neuralink mark of the beast, and not be able to function without the Neuralink and so on. Those of you who are interested in this stuff can check that out. This woman was
very interested in brain chips, and I think I always think as soon as a functioning version of it comes out, I want to immediately participate.
And Elon's like, this is the new Neuralink 666 model, which will be installed in all people, or 616 for those of you who want to talk about the variant. This woman was never a real atheist. Without religion, there is no evil or crime, and without crime, there is no Australia. This video has been debunked. That is pretty airtight. Pretty airtight. Thoughts on Sam reconciling with Anthony? Yeah. Good luck. Well, humans have some moral values that seem to be genetically encoded, e.g. disgust from incest. Really? Just by nature?
Did you say incest from incest?
Disgust from incest. Yeah, and keep in mind, so couple things here. One, first cousin marriage, really, really popular in certain areas, and it leads to all sorts of genetic problems. So if it's genetically encoded, why is it leading to all these kinds of problems? But yes, certain things are genetically encoded. You can say a kind of herd instinct and so on, or having a certain base level of empathy when you see something suffering and so on. But if you say, notice, so this is a perfect example of what would be the is-ought fallacy. Let's go ahead and grant. We'll say humans have a just natural, innate disgust at incest. They don't want to do it. Saying you have an innate disgust at something does not mean you have a moral obligation to avoid it. That would be the is-ought fallacy. And you can use other species. So I've mentioned before, a lion that moves into a new pride of lions. So the big lion in some other pride gets killed and a new boss lion moves into that pride. That new lion will kill all the baby lions, all the baby lion cubs, to make room for its own offspring. It does that by nature. It just does that. It's just wired to do that. Would you say, therefore, it has a moral obligation to do that? No, that would be weird. I mean, there are organisms that reproduce by violently graping the females in the species, and so you don't say, therefore, it has a moral obligation to do that. So that's the issue. You can say there are certain things that you can attribute to genetics, things that helped our ancestors survive, and now we're wired to do those kinds of things. Where are you getting the idea that you have a moral obligation to do things that helped your ancestors survive? Keep in mind, you could have imagine a situation where someone is like the most prolific grapist in the world, and that he impregnated lots of women through graping them and so on.
Genghis Khan.
But then he would be passing on his genes, which predispose him to go around graping women, and his offspring would be more inclined to do that. So what are you saying? That if they're inclined to do that, that it's therefore morally right? That's the point. Just saying, hey, this species is kind of programmed into, genetically programmed, genetically wired to do certain things, does not give you a moral obligation. And so if the real conclusion is, if you're taking atheism as a foundation, that there are no real objective moral values. But if you want to believe there are objective moral values, you need some sort of foundation. What is it that makes those things true? And they're not just how you're wired, or not just what your parents told you, or not just what society told you.
But you don't necessarily have to appeal to this in order to establish that there are moral obligations. You could simply assert that you could only use this for an explanation to say that you may think that morals come from religion, but they are actually found in nature and established based on certain natural, results. Which is why we come to the conclusion that we need those morals, and this wouldn't satisfy the question of moral obligations, but it would explain the origins of morals.
You can totally explain the issue, unless a religion specifically, like something specifically comes from a religion. Like, I don't see where you would ever get the idea that human beings are equal or something. I don't see where you get those ideas. Yeah. But lots of things about, not killing or helping other things, you can explain totally just from any framework how we got to those ideas. So you can explain lots of these things. But yeah, it's the realm of moral obligation, where if you think you actually have moral obligations to do certain things, I will say this, AP, a person could believe in moral obligations and be kind of agnostic as to the foundation.
Yeah.
Like you could say, hey, I believe I have a moral obligation, an objective moral obligation to not torture old ladies for fun or something like that. But I have no idea what it is that grounds it. I don't see how atheism would ground it, but I just don't know. I believe it's real and objective. I have no idea what it is that makes it objective. You could have a position like that.
Alhamdulillah.
Let's see. A lot of what initially drew me to Christianity was seeing the consequences of a godless society. That is a situation we're going to be seeing a lot more of. Because the theory of the new atheist was get a bunch of people to leave Christianity and society will flourish and become this scientific utopia, blah, 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 blah. Now you see it. No, actually, millions of people became atheists and the whole world instantly went insane.
Beast.
People are seeing it. Let's see. Any word yet on the Dershowitz libel lawsuit? Have you heard anything about that? I haven't seen anything about that.
I haven't. The last thing that I heard of Dershowitz is that he's putting a team together to respond to something around Israel, a team of lawyers. But I don't know if there's anything, if there's any development regarding his the lawsuit that he wants to bring against Mohammed Hijab. I haven't
Yeah.
heard anything from hijab since then. Maybe he was advised to shut up a little bit or something. I don't know.
He should have been, and there are certain things that he shouldn't have said because there are certain things he can be sued over. Whether Dershowitz is actually going to sue him for those, because keep in mind, guys, there are all sorts of things that you can sue over and possibly win that you don't necessarily want to, right? In other words, you're gonna have to. It's a lot of work. It's going to take up a lot of time in your schedule and so on. Do you actually want to do it?
Yes.
Because he did kind of guarantee. He did kind of say it. He did kind of guarantee that he was going to sue. So how seriously can we take him if he doesn't follow through?
I would think that he is not somebody who would bluff about this kind of stuff.
One says, I'm 53-year-old playing with my plump niece, 9-year-old girl. I'd to resist Allah a lot. Without God, there's no accountability. There are immaterial things. What are you laughing at?
Nothing.
I don't fully understand this. Let's see. When I was agnostic, the pebble in my shoe was the thought that Muslim daughters who had female genital mutilation done to them were never proven to have been wronged or sinned against. No one would ever reward good behavior or correct bad behavior.
That's what they do.
You can reward good behavior and correct bad behavior and so on.
That's what they do.
But you're right. It wouldn't be an issue of someone who's been wronged has been sinned against.
That's what they do.
Oh, you're just saying because... I can actually interpret this in a couple different ways, so we'll just move along here. Atheists believe everyone is equally worthless. Yeah, atheism. Obligations arise out of love. Where in atheism can love exist? It overthrows atheism. What do you know? You can love people, and you can love. To be clear, you can love people in atheism, and you could love tons of people. You could love everybody in atheism, and you could spend your entire life as an atheist doing nothing but helping people. When we're talking about obligations, it's okay. If you're not like that, suppose you don't love anybody, you don't care about anyone, do you have an obligation to do something anyway? If so, the question from an atheist perspective would be what? What is it that makes these obligations valid? I'm not aware of anything. Grafted Garkid says, atheists sometimes are vegetarians because they can't regulate their morals and think killing animals for food is murder. You could come to that conclusion, right? It would be hard to say if you're an atheist. So you can be an atheist. You can believe that killing anything is wrong. But that's kind of the point. You can believe anything. You can believe anything you want. So as an atheist, you could believe that killing animals is wrong and that therefore we should be vegetarians. The question is, how would you demonstrate that to another atheist who doesn't think that it's wrong to kill things for food? And if you're talking to another atheist who doesn't just believe that's wrong, how do you then defend that position? How do you say you also should not kill animals? How do you do it? I'm not aware of any basis. Thoughts on Rabbi Shmuley taking Shapiro to court over Candace Owens? He posted a Coke rant about it on X. Do you know about this?
What?
Are you familiar with this? I haven't heard about this.
No.
Rabbi Shmuley
taking Shapiro to court? What?
How would that work? How would that even work? She doesn't work for them anymore.
Somebody needs to tell Shmuley to shut up. But I really wonder what's happened. Let's see.
Quit being rude. Yeah, look that up, and you can update us here in a second. He posted a Coke rant about it. Huh. You should review the Young Turks. I'm guessing YT. Young Turks, or is that YouTube?
YouTube.
You should review the YouTube or Young Turks video. Racist Christian thinks atheism is spreading Islam. About you, D Wood. Racist Christian thinks atheism is spreading Islam. Racist Christian. I might check that out. That might be a fun one to go through. I screenshotted that. About you, D Wood. Appreciate you all and enjoy the AP Dizzle dynamic. That's what we do. We have good dynamics. Can you explain why Muslims don't think Islam is responsible for Bakabazi? It is against Islam, but many Islamic cultures do it. It's similar with the Bakabazi. It's similar to, although I wouldn't even consider this as you have a better case for honor killings. So honor killings are a practice that predates Islam and that other cultures have had. There are elements in Islam which help justify the practice, right? Like in Islam, if you're going to justify honor killings, it's okay, this girl has done something that's goes against Islam. And according to Surah 4, verse 65, if she's not going along with everything Muhammad said, then she's actually an apostate. And what did Muhammad say about apostates? We all know. So you can justify the practice. And with the Bakabazi, that again would be a cultural thing. But given Islam and kids and all the sexual repression and so on, it becomes a bit easier to justify than it would be for certain other groups. Or to defend, or at least to ignore, and to let it slide. AP was never a true Muslim or atheist. He didn't date his cousins. It's probably the most airtight. My argument about inherent morality encoded goes rather towards theism, human beings created in the image of God. That's why animals don't follow morality. Well, I mean, animals, they're not following things for moral reasons. They can be programmed to do certain things. But yes, so divine command theory, ladies and gentlemen, people hear it for some reason and they think, oh, you don't know what, they give it like an Islamic interpretation, which has nothing to do with divine command theory, but they think when you hear divine command theory, that what that means is you don't know what right or wrong is unless you hear God telling you or you're reading it in the Bible or something like that. That's not what divine command theory is. Divine command theory is the idea that what your moral obligations really are, your actual moral obligations. Now, you could be told that something is a moral obligation and it's not actually a moral obligation, but if you have actual moral obligations, what those moral obligations ultimately are, they're commands of God. They are commands. And it's interesting because that's the easiest way to express them. If I say do not murder, as far as language is concerned, that's a command. Do not murder. It's okay. Where does that command come from? Do not torture old ladies for fun. Do not steal stuff that doesn't belong to you. These all sound like commands. So the question is, what's the status of command? Is it your parents telling you this? Is it society telling you this? Divine command theory is that these things ultimately are commands of God, and that's the basis for them. However, with that said, God can communicate those commands to you in all kinds of ways. One way that God could communicate commands to you could be through genetics. You could actually be programmed to have certain ideas about right and wrong.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Let's see, a couple more. Let's just jump into the video. Oh, we got a couple more. Jump back in this video. D. Wood, have you considered making a video that explains different rules of philosophy of Logic 101, but then apply them all to Islam, i.e. Mott and Bailey, modus ponens, straw man, red herrings? Yeah, I actually have thought it. I planned on that for years. Like, explain the fallacy or something like this, and then give a bunch of examples of it from like Dawa videos and so on. Yeah, been planning it for a long time. Never actually got around to doing it. But matter of fact, it's right in front. I even bought a big whiteboard so I could actually be writing it out because it's easier to discuss if you're writing it on a whiteboard. But yeah, maybe sometime in the future. But I think it's important because, there are massive books about logic and so on. As far as what's kind of relevant to people in everyday life, there's a handful of fallacies people need to be aware of because they happen all the time. So it's similar to psychology in that psychology is a huge field, but there are certain elements that people need to understand. People in general need to understand. What is the worst argument for God's existence? What's your thought on this? What's the worst argument for God's existence, AP?
It's so bad that I forgot what it's called. the Anselm's thing.
Oh, you're going to go with ontological argument?
Yeah. The main rudimentary form of it.
I'm trying to think, because I don't want to say a bad one or a dumb one, and then like there are way worse ones. Because I've seen some stupid arguments over the years. Like one time I got a message from a Muslim, and he said, Muhammad Ali was the most popular athlete in the world when he converted to Islam. Unless you can show a more popular athlete who converted to Christianity, you must accept Islam. And I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. So there are dumb arguments. I don't know. I'm assuming that there are all kinds of really, really stupid arguments for God's existence. Unless you're talking about like of the standard arguments for God's existence, which one is best? I mean, which one is worst?
The best one is definitely look around you. Look at the mountains and trees.
It depends on how you develop it, because there are people who rigorously develop philosophical arguments out of stuff like that. All right. Recently saw a channel called Rationality Rules, and it kind of you have to be joking. Rationality Rules, and it kind of shook my faith. Some things he says make sense, and it scares me how to deal with this. Foxy Grandpa, I actually think you're a troll. I seriously think you're a troll. Hey, AP, I didn't tell you this, but it was funny. Remember when Rationality Rules and what's that other channel that did a video with him? He's been on with us before.
Myth Vision.
They apparently responded to me, but it was after Rationality Rules posted one of the worst / dumbest / most deceptive videos I've ever seen in my entire life. That was supposedly a response to something else. And so I was just like, I have zero interest. And I even said it when we reviewed that. I was like, I have zero interest in responding to anything else. And then suddenly, but we made another 4-hour video response. I have zero interest in stuff like that. Anyway, we announced that I said it. I said, I'm not interested in covering any of this stuff. Anyway, right after I said, not interested in covering any of this stuff, I get this email and said, hey, David, I'm an ex-Muslim and I was thinking of converting to Christianity, but then I saw all this powerful stuff from Myth Vision and Rationality Rules. And I'm wondering if you could respond to all this powerful stuff that's really shaking my intention of converting to Christianity. Now, why it was interesting was it was sent to my private email. That message was sent to my private email, which is not listed anywhere, which means the only way you'd get that is if I've been in contact with you before, which means it's someone I've been in contact with. Uh-huh. And isn't that interesting? Anyway, nice try, Foxy Grandpa. Seriously, if someone said that their faith was shaken by Rationality Rules, I would think there's almost no hope for you apart from a miracle, because you would...
That's pretty rude.
Yeah. All right, back to this powerful.
So I just looked at the whole thing that was just brought up about Candace Owens and Shmuley.
Is there something going on?
Apparently Candace Owens is suing Rabbi Shmuley, and he received notice of it.
Wait, what? She's suing him?
She's suing him,
okay.
And he's countersuing her, and also
for what, like defamation stuff?
So apparently, Candace is suing him because he started. Apparently, he listed her name on products or something like that.
Like
to give people discounts and stuff like that. But I don't think that's actually something to sue over. But then, she is in contact with Kanye and was in contact with Ben Shapiro. He got very angry about this whole suing thing, so he's now suing her for suggesting that he is responsible.
Ben Shapiro?
No, Shmuley is suing is suing Candace Owens for suggesting that he is responsible for the killing of Michael Jackson. She actually said that he killed him. He killed Michael Jackson, and he wants to sue her over that statement and over several other things, and also wants to subpoena the communications between Candace Owens, Kanye, and Ben Shapiro, and he's also accusing now Ben Shapiro of being the creator of Candace and of having sent her into the wilds and let her out and to have made money over her Nazi behavior and so on. I don't know, wild stuff.
This is wild stuff.
all these wild people are fighting. It's kind of funny to me.
Wow.
I just wish all of them would be quiet.
That would be a good approach, especially you, Candace, and Rabbi
Yeah.
Shmuley.
Not Ben Shapiro.
Something seems to have snapped in you. Understandable. There are things that can really freak people out, and you look around, you see all these people calling for the destruction of Israel and so on. Could understand how that could send you off a deep end, but if you realize you've gone off the deep end on some issues, AP's got some good advice.
Candace Owens, Kanye West, and Rabbi Shmuley, you all need to shut up and disappear.
Not you though, Ben.
Not you, Ben. Ben, you're good. You're cool.
Keep talking. All right.
In his philosophy, I won't go into it too much, but no, in fact, so his position is, look, if we want to think about ideas about human rights, for example, or rights that humans might have vis-a-vis rights that animals might have and so forth, we need to come up with an understanding of what this concept of personhood is. And in order to qualify for personhood, as it were, we need to kind of, in Singer's view, understand that people have different capacities, and different capacities mean that, people, for example, who are profoundly intellectually disabled, for example, don't have those kinds of capacities. And so there's no inherent, as you were saying, there's no inherent sense of the value of human life whatsoever.
So as you were grappling with these ideas, where did this leave you feeling? You said it was a sort of intellectual vertigo.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you could get sort of take on board Singer's perspective? Did you try to kind of live with that kind of ethic for a while, that maybe our value is basically a factor of our abilities, our capacities, our ability to reason and so on?
Yeah. I remember thinking through that question a lot. But really, I think the other thing that was going on for me at the same time was that a sort of much more, because so far the story is quite an intellectual one, which it is, but at the same time, there's a far more personal side to this as well, which is that by this time I was in my mid-20s, and it struck me that I'd been very much kind of living a life of where I was basically trying to attain my own self-worth. And this had worked out remarkably well. But yet that's in many ways, that's the funny thing about it, isn't it? That I realized by the time I got into Oxford, I basically, mine is on some personal level, a story of somebody who has, had these great dreams, and through various, circumstances, providence, has been able to achieve at the 8-year-old who dreams of going to Cambridge from the other side of the world and gets there, right? But here's the thing, it was soon becoming apparent that the more you achieve, the fellowship, the book contract, or whatever it is, the more there is simply another rung of the ladder. And so in many ways, this kind of personal story and intellectual story were kind of coming together at the same time, as it were, because what I was...
Oh, so she's talking about like different things sort of all coming together and pointing in a different direction, but she's talking about establishing her own self-worth by accomplishments and going to school. And she pointed out that, every step up the ladder, there's just another rung. It's like earning money, right? It's like, oh man, if I just had $1 million, everything would be good. And then you get $1 million. It's like, I really, really need 2, or I need 10 or something like this. You get 10. Come on, I got to have 50 and stuff like that.
Starting to realize is that I'd kind of been living a life in which I had been trying to attain my own self-worth through hard work and through achievement, and living as if that kind of intellectual or academic success were ultimate. Now, that's not to say for a moment that the academic achievement isn't a good thing and an important thing. And later, when I became a Christian, read the Bible, there is an enormous emphasis upon the importance of using one's mind, because God gave us minds, and pursuing wisdom, which begins with God. But my problem is that I turned that into an ultimate thing. I sort of came to realize this rather slowly, but I turned that into the thing that I lived for, and what was becoming evident in my mid-20s at, the kind of high point in one's young life, as it were.
By the way, AP, that's what you were kind of talking about earlier, as far as meaning and so on, meaning, ethics and so on, and not having a foundation for it, you can kind of make up meaning as you go along. And you could have certain kinds of meaning, but
As it were.
you don't have kind of ultimate meaning. It seems like that's what she was wrestling with. Wait, I've got all these things I'm doing, I'm accomplishing all these things, but what's like, there's something that's not really well grounded in all of it.
As it were, yeah.
Yeah, as it were. That should be the name of our show, the As It Were Show, or Screaming Guts Podcast, one of those.
I kind of like it when people say that. When say as it were. Yeah. When British people say it, I like it. It's kind of a nice thing to say.
As it were.
As it were.
As it were. As a twir. You know, it'd be funny, have like a movie and a guy's like, as it were. And it's like, what's a twir?
What is a twir? My
You're a
entire
twir?
life
You're a
I've been
twir?
wondering what
You're
a
a
twir
twir?
is. Alhamdulillah.
Is that if that becomes the ultimate thing, the thing that you live for, even when it seems to kind of keep on giving, it's never, ever enough. And so actually what had happened is that when those two things kind of came together, I went through a period of really trying to ask more deeply, both intellectually and personally, well, what is this? What is the alternative story then? And I remember that one day, one kind of winter actually, I was in the college library at Wolfson at Oxford, and I'd always had my desk, strangely enough, in front of the theology section, and I'd never really bothered to venture into that section of the library. And
Oh, hey, so she's talking about her desk at the library. I'm guessing it's the same at Oxford, but yeah, in graduate school, you'll have a huge library, but if you want a desk to just be yours, you can have a desk and it will actually have your name on it. This is the desk for so-and-so. I was never terribly interested because I would read at home mostly, but you can get that. So she's got her desk, and she's saying her desk at the library at Oxford was right there in front of the theology section. And anyway,
I decided to wander along the shelves, and I picked up various books of sermons, and I started to read. I think, to be honest, I was probably, I didn't want to go near a Bible, but I started to read sermons. And what I discovered was,
what'd you say?
I said, this is my desk. There are many like it, but this one is mine.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And she was like that, and hers was in front of the theology section. And she says she grabbed a book of sermons and started reading sermons. That is an interesting. I don't think I've ever heard that before. Like, hey, I'm going to go read something. Let me pick up this book of sermons.
Alhamdulillah.
that I had actually never understood theology. I'd never even thought deeply about Christianity at all. And actually, the theology, the actual biblical story about who God is and who humankind is, I mean, humanity, which is so profoundly corrupt and sinful, and who has rejected God and yet has this kind of yearning sense that this world is not ultimately what we are made for or who we are made for, started to make profound sense for me. And of course, you know, growing up as a millennial, the concept of sin is a difficult one to think through.
Sin.
And it takes some years, right? But what those sermons and what I, after that, sort of started to read theology and eventually the Bible, what this started to reveal to me was that actually the Bible story about who we are and who God is and how we have sinned and rejected God, and how at the ultimate, with paying this ultimate cost, there is the perfect human, Christ himself, God himself in Christ, who
She
has actually lived.
This is a very important point, which I quickly want to point out. But she kind of looks
you
like
wanted to interrupt. Go ahead.
she kind of looks like William Lane Craig. Anyway, continue.
She's about 11,000 times more attractive than William Lane Craig. No offense to William Lane Craig. She's about 11,000 times more attractive than me. Just
Yeah,
to be
but
clear.
she looks like an attractive William Lane Craig. Yeah.
What the heck are you talking about?
which does not mean that William Lane Craig is not attractive. Of course, if somebody is interested in men, maybe they might find William Lane Craig attractive as well. But there's something about her that looks like William Lane Craig.
These are the deep thoughts of the apostate prophet that he just interrupted this woman when she's talking about some of the most important stuff. And what she was saying, ladies and gentlemen, was she had all these ideas and beliefs about ethics and what human beings are, and that when she looked into these things from an atheist perspective, the new atheist, Peter Singer and so on, it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. And she started reading sermons and thinking, wow, these sermons about Christianity actually make more sense of these things. Now, as I pointed out before, if you were an atheist, because it is interesting. It's like, wait, these are all these things I believe. And it makes no sense on atheism, which is what she believed at the time. It makes no sense on atheism, but it does make sense over here. So, I mean, if this is what makes sense of all these things, then maybe I need to believe this thing over here and reject the atheism. From an atheist perspective, if you actually wanted to respond to that, what you would say is, again, those ideas that you have were actually influenced by Christianity. That's why they fit well That's why they fit well with Christianity and don't fit well with atheism. So it depends on how seriously you take those ideas. Because the alternative approach is, well, I can't take those ideas seriously because they have no foundation on atheism. But fortunately, she chose the correct path.
The perfect life, and then
back
died
up slightly since AP ruined
after that. Sort of started to read theology and eventually the Bible. What this started to reveal to me was that actually the Bible story about who we are and who God is, and how we have sinned and rejected God, and how at the ultimate, with paying this ultimate cost, there is the perfect human, Christ himself, God himself in Christ, who has actually lived the perfect life and then died in our place. That story, very slowly, made not only intellectual sense to me, but was profoundly personally compelling, because it was abundantly clear that I was yearning for something that only God himself could satisfy. I later learned, that famous line from St. Augustine that talks about our hearts being restless until they find their rest in you, Lord.
And by the way, all of that that's all very interesting as well. And so from an atheist perspective, what you'd say is we have this yearning for meaning and things like that. And that's why people come up with religion. Because you have these built-in desires and so on. But even that is interesting, because from a Christian perspective, you would say, yes, because that's what you were made for. You were made to know God. That's why you have this desire for meaning and all these things. That's why you were built for this. Whereas from an atheist view, you'd have to say it's like a kind of accident. You just and it's kind of, it should almost make you like, gosh, boy, you poor human beings. You're built with this built-in desire for meaning that you can never actually have except by delusion. That would kind of be like human beings would be something to be pitied, right? Like if there is no ultimate meaning and there is no real moral obligation, no objective moral obligation, then it kind of sucks for us that we're just, there's some fluke in our wiring that makes us want these things. You'd be programmed to want things that you can't actually have, and that you can only think you have by deluding yourself with religion or something like that. So this is another example of what makes more sense, that the reason we want these things is because we're made for this by God, or it's just kind of an accident. We're just another species like other species. We're a little smarter, but one of the weird things that happens with intelligence is that somehow we become, to an extent, obsessed with what's the real meaning behind these things, and do I have a real moral obligation to do these kind of things? But
exactly, alhamdulillah.
It seemed like she came to the more based conclusion, unlike certain agnostics.
And Augustine's Confessions, reading that, and gosh, I'd say to anyone listening, if you haven't read Augustine's Confessions, read them. They're so good. They're just so.
They are good. It's one long prayer, one massive long prayer to God, an entire book, and him confessing all the things he's done and how he came to various conclusions. Very interesting.
Well, wasn't he a Gnostic or something, or
Yeah, what was my brain is way too fried. He's one of
I
those
thought he was a Manichaean.
Manichaeans. Yeah, Manichaeans. Yeah,
Manichaean,
that's what he was before he converted. And he has all these like the most famous stories about him and the pear tree. It was him and his young buddies. He was a teenager. He's hanging out with a bunch of other teenagers, and they're carousing in the middle of the night, and they see a neighbor's pear tree, and they shake the pears out of the pear tree and gather the pears, and they eat a couple, and they weren't even especially good pears, but they're like, hey, we're going to take these pears and give them to pigs. And he just goes on page after page after page, and people don't understand what he's getting at. Even though I've always thought it was pretty darn clear, but people are like, really? That's what? Because he's writing this decades later, and he's obsessed with this event when he was a teenager, where him and his buddies stole these pears. And like, seriously, that's what you're worried about? A teenage prank? Why would this bother you? But what he's getting at in there is there was absolutely no reason to steal the pears. He didn't steal the pears because he was hungry. He didn't steal the pears because he wanted the pears and he couldn't afford them. He lists all the reasons that someone might commit a crime, right? If you go out and grape some woman, it's because his view is that lots of things we do wrong, it's because we actually want something that's good, but we go about it in a completely wrong way. So if you grape a woman, you might want power, which could be good. Not that kind of power. I'm saying you want to be in control. Or you just want sex, so you want pleasure. Pleasure would be good, not in that way, but you would be seeking something that's good, but in the wrong way. So he's saying there's certain kinds of, most sins are things where you're pursuing something good, but you're doing it in an unacceptable way. But he points out that particular instance bothered him was because there was no good thing that he was seeking. Again, he didn't need the pears. It wasn't because he was hungry. He says they were doing it just because it was wrong. They did something just because it was fun to do something wrong. So this really bothered him. Like, why would it be fun just to do something for the sake of sin? And that bothered him. That bothered him a lot. Anyway, it goes on page after page. But anyway, it's cool little story.
Have you ever read The City of God?
I've read parts of it back in the day, but that was a much bigger book.
Yes, that's a massive book. Mm-hmm. I have it myself, but I haven't read any. I only read a few pages of it.
You want to impress everyone? Read City of God. It'll be based.
Incredibly profound, but that kind of sense of yearning was exactly what I was experiencing.
So you were going on this
like
journey. You were reading books of sermons in your college library. Did you at some point take the brave step of going into a church? Did you establish any friendships with Christians at this time?
What are you laughing at? You're like, oh, what kind of Luther would go to a church? Why would you do that?
Because somebody is just making lame jokes in the chat, like, why did the priest bless his milk to pasteurize it, and so on. Why?
This is the downside of doing shows with AP and his ADHD.
Yes. So this is a kind of, period of a few years here. I didn't step into a church earnestly seeking God, I think, until I was in America. So I had got a tenure track academic job at Florida State University in Tallahassee. And I found myself in that city sort of profoundly after a while, very much on my own. And I think that gave me the freedom eventually after a kind of personal sort of relationship breakdown and sort of mini crisis, to be honest, to actually walk into church as somebody who was actually humbly seeking God, actually wondering what this was all about. And so I walked into church one Sunday by myself in Tallahassee, and that was a really unsettling but also profoundly beautiful experience, because in many ways, the world outside, and particularly if you've, for me, growing up in a very kind of secular society in which all things are very much are very mundane. But then entering church for the first time, this was a church in which there was a liturgy and they celebrated the Lord's Supper. And I remember that there was a kind of and perhaps too, because, I'm a historian and so drawn to the profundity of all things historical and this idea that people have been uttering since Christ himself utters these words, this is my body, broken for you. That people have been uttering these words, singing these psalms and these hymns for generations. There was a kind of stability and truth and groundedness there that I was yearning for, that in the outside world in which all was kind of mundane and transient, that the Lord's Supper that morning invited me, not that I could take it, I'd never been baptized, but there was an invitation there which I wanted to accept, but which I couldn't at that point because I hadn't been baptized, that there was an invitation there to be grafted into to have a relationship with God and to be grafted into a people that was not only a horizontal kind of church across the world, but actually a people through time. And that was really profound. Anyway, there were, several kind of months of rather feebly kind of attending church and not knowing what all this was really all about, and taking the catechism classes, taught very, very faithfully and hearing really good preaching and starting to read the Bible. And anyway, I was just 28 when I was baptized, in Tallahassee.
There you
Oh, wait.
What?
What kind of Christian is she now?
I don't know.
That's interesting.
One of the versions that catechize people.
That's why I'm asking.
But that could be that could be Lutheran, that could be multiple things. So unless you find it, we would not know. That is interesting as far as predictions for the future, because she's covered a lot of different things. She's talking about how she believes certain things about what humans are and about right and wrong, and atheism didn't make sense of those, but Christianity did. Whereas here it's more along what she just said there. It's more along the lines of, hey, here's something that's stable and not changing in ways that society is massively changing right now. I think you're going to have, just from a psychological perspective, not even from like true and false perspective, I think you're going to be having more of that. And by the way, there are people who become Muslims because of that, right? Like they're freaked out. This is not what she's talking about, because this was a little bit, before some of the things that have happened in the past couple of years. But there are people who convert to Islam just because they're freaked out by all the stuff, how rapidly things are changing. And hey, guess what? Islam does give you more stability in that sense, because the takeaway message is that, hey, if we all live and think and eat and breathe and walk and talk like 7th century Arabs, then we wouldn't be changing very much. That's true. So for someone who's freaked out by all the change, that's why you can, that's Daniel Hikikachu's appeal. Hey, look at all this stuff happening. Islam can save you from all this weird stuff that's happening in the world. But anyway, lots of people are going to be going through that. Like, given how rapidly things are changing, I need some stability and so on.
Oh, well, she's an associate professor at the Catholic University. But that doesn't necessarily mean that she's Catholic.
That doesn't mean she's Catholic, yeah. I went to Fordham, which is Jesuit University. There were only a couple of Jesuit philosophy professors there, even though Jesuits have a big emphasis on philosophy. But yeah, there were atheist professors, agnostic professors.
Jesuits created Islam.
Even though they were formed after Islam, it actually cracks me up. It's like Jesuits came along long after Islam.
Some people.
Yeah. All right, let's take these couple super chats real quick. And then this is from a longer interview. We're about 20 minutes into it. The whole thing is just under an hour. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but this next little section here is relevant.
Is she
And then,
Anglican? Somebody said she's Anglican. Somebody said Episcopal. I don't know. I don't know what's true here. So that's pretty much the same thing, isn't it? Yeah, whatever. I don't know. Somebody tell us.
let's see. What are the best responses when people counter my arguments about the dangers of Islam with all extremism is bad or all religions are bad, atheism is good? Also, D Wood, AP, you're based, Daily Wire, and Associated Press, you're based.
Most reliable news platforms on the internet, most definitely. What are the best responses when people counter my arguments about the danger of Islam with all extremism is bad? Can you point me at the extremism? Can you show me where the extremism is taking place? Where's the Christian extremism taking place? What is the predominant Christian extremism doing around the world? How much of terrorism is Christian extremism responsible for? How much is Jewish terrorism responsible for? How much is Hindu terrorism responsible for? How much is Jain terrorism responsible for? What do Jains prominently do, famously do that is just extremely extremist? What do Buddhists do? Buddhists seem like very, very extremist, very violent, intolerant people, right? So what exactly what exactly are we talking about when we say extremism? When it comes to religiously motivated terrorist attacks or terrorist attacks in general, Islam takes the cake and is responsible for more than 80% of terrorism-related deaths. That kind of looks like that there is something specifically messed up about Islam.
Yeah, there's something different about this. One of these things is not like the other. You might need to sing that song to your atheist friends there, Mr. Yes Minuk.
And then you look at the history of it. Islam is the only religion which, according to its own historians and own books, has the obligation to go out into the world and to spread the religion by will or by force. My favorite go-to reference, Ibn Khaldun's Muqaddimah, this very, very famous book for sociology, which directly includes the admission from himself saying that Islam is unique in this regard, unlike Christianity and Judaism. So Muslims have the obligation to spread the religion by will or by the sword, which is why European nations very early on went into nation building, went into early forms of nationalism and built, for example, Italy and France and so on, and England, while the Muslims maintained their ambition to have a united empire and to constantly conquer and conquer and conquer and spread the religion. They were forced to stop it because of the West. They were forced by the West to stop their endless expansionism. You can go to the scripture and point out that Islam is the only religion which has a book that is considered directly and literally full of instructions, word for word, for all Muslims at all times, unchangeably. And you can find there in chapter 9, verse 29, that it says, "Fight those who do not believe in Allah and His Messenger and who do not adopt the religion of truth," meaning Islam, among those who follow the scripture, meaning Jews and Christians. So it commands Muslims to fight the Christians and the Jews and also to fight everybody else and to subjugate and humiliate them and take protection money from them and to turn everyone into subjects and to kill them. Islam is the only religion that has such things. There is no other religion that has any such things, which is why Islam tends to turn people into extremists, which does not happen because Muslim countries are just treated so badly and bombed and so on.
That's right. It's because of climate change.
Yeah. Hiroshima was bombed. Japan was brutalized in World War II. Right, it turned into an extremely peaceful country and is currently far ahead of the entire Muslim world. So...
yeah, what you can say is, are you serious?
What?
Go ahead.
What do you mean, go ahead?
I'm saying, do you have that just to look cool, or can you actually do anything with that?
No, I just got it because I thought it's cool.
Doesn't that look like I can't even tell. It looks like an electric guitar that you couldn't even play right now.
Yeah, I can play it like a normal guitar.
You should get an oud. You know about that instrument?
Yes, of course I do.
Is that one of those things where they have the weird sign like?
Rude. It's a Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
I also got a
You even
name,
have a
which-
price tag still on that thing. Would you just get this today?
Yeah, I just got it today because I thought I should make a video with an electric guitar.
Yeah, you'd be super cool and bass. That'll help encourage everybody.
But I also always wanted to have an electric guitar, even if I can't play it. But I thought maybe I should start learning it.
Yeah, so Emily looked it up on her website here and says she quotes it, Sarah and her family are active members of a Sydney Anglican church. So now you know. Sydney Anglican Church. Back on the topic, so Mr. Yes Manak, so what you can say is to your friends that, anytime you have human beings involved, human beings can decide to go on a killing spree or to do terrorism, right? A human being can decide that, whatever his ideology is, even if his ideology or his religion, whatever, condemns that behavior, people can always be disobedient. The difference between Islam and other things is Islam actually advocates and commands it. And that's why it's much more prevalent there. Can a Christian or a Jew or an atheist say, you know what, I got to go kill a bunch of people? Yes, that person could. And depending on whether their ideology or their worldview contains commands not to do that, they could, in theory, be inconsistent with their own position. In Islam, it's perfectly consistent to want to subjugate the world and to use terrorism as a method for getting what you want. So that's why on the one hand, there is a huge difference between Islam and other religions. Matter of fact, every year on the Religion of Peace website, every year during Ramadan, he'll have the Ramadan Bombathon. I make videos sometimes about the Ramadan Bombathon where he goes through all of Ramadan and he keeps a scorecard. And the scorecard is terrorist attacks carried out in the name of Islam and terrorist attacks carried out in the name of all other religions combined. Islam always, always, always wins by far. It's not even close. And so there's a difference between Islam and everything else. And when you try to figure out why there's a difference, you get into what the religion actually teaches. And so tell that to your silly atheist friends and humiliate them. You must humiliate them. Hey, you saying William Lane Craig is as attractive as a blonde-haired woman? Sankei said he clipped it and sent it to William Lane Craig. And here's Gay P from Gay P. She is all right, but you know who really gets me going? William Lane Craig. Whew, I hope I hope he philosophies about me. That's funny. The four horse monkeys. Woohoo! The four horse monkeys. Sorry, the four horsemen of the new atheism have mocked Revelation 6 and missed Genesis 50:20. Even with an AP, God uses all things for his glory. Genesis 50:20, that's the what you meant for evil, God uses for good. So I guess the idea is these guys tried to destroy Christianity, and look what they're doing. AP looks like a prettier Fidel Castro. Yeah, that's true. That's mainly though your beard and stuff. If you had a cigar and the Fidel Castro hat, you would look like a legit communist.
I mean, I see the point. I kind of look like a younger Fidel Castro. Interesting.
Character saying you rock. Oh, that's super sticker. Thank you, Alan. And last one here before we jump back into the video. AP needs new computer so he can do the one thing he does to make money. Buys an electric guitar. That's funny. AP needs a new computer so he can do the one thing he does to make money. Instead, buys an electric guitar.
This literally costs 50 times less than a computer would cost. So.
Well, considering everyone would gladly chip in, it would cost you nothing, actually. So don't be lying. Wow. AP kicking out smooth jams with his new guitar. Man, you rock that thing almost as well as you rock a shofar.
Of course, man.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
All right.
Go. Hi, Justin here. Hope you're enjoying the conversation. Just to say, if you'd like a free chapter of my book.
Hey, You know what? I was about to skip through this since it's commercial, but no, we're watching his content here. So go ahead and pay attention to this. And I have a link to Justin's channel and to the full interview with Sarah in the description box. So, and to the books that he's linked to. I mean, the books that he mentioned. I don't think this one here, but yeah, check out
The Surprising Rebirth of Belief in God. I'll send it to you when you join my newsletter. Just visit justinbrierley.com. The link is with the info below. Now, back to the conversation. I'm sure you've done a lot of putting the pieces together since that time as well. And there's obviously we all go on a continuing journey. But what difference did it make at that? Well, firstly, I suppose an intellectual level. Did it feel like you were able to now reconcile that deep sense you had of the value of human life that had been challenged by Peter Singer, because you saw it from this new perspective?
So anyone who's tuning in late because you rudely weren't here at the beginning, she was talking about she was raised in basically a secular environment in Australia, went to Cambridge and Oxford, had certain beliefs about what human beings are and right and wrong and so on, realized, spurred on by the new atheist and by the ethicist Peter Singer, realized that atheism can't really account for things she believed, started reading sermons at Oxford, realized that Christianity seems to be able to make more sense of these things she believed, and then eventually, when she was in the United States, started going to church, was attracted to sort of stability that comes with these rituals and so on that have been around for many centuries, became a Christian. And so now Justin is asking, okay, so you had these, you said yearnings and so on for things involving meaning and so on, and all these other issues. Did Christianity actually do what you were hoping it would do? That was the question. And now her answer.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, that was perfect.
And I think
did you see how perfect that was? I recited the question. I recapped everything and said, what's her answer? And she said, yes. That was totally an accident. It was just worked out really well. So, AP, you heard it from her. She's been down the road. And she says, yes.
I've been down the road.
Yes, it did.
And
because I'm a historian, and because an academic historian, therefore you're teaching, lecturing to students, taking seminars with students. In history, again and again, you encounter the lives of people. If you encounter, for example, when I teach the British Empire or any kind of modern empire or ancient empire, you encounter, for example, the lives of slaves. You encounter the lives of women. You encounter the lives of those whose lives, the Bible says, are infinitely precious. The lives of those who are otherwise, however, discarded and ignored, the least of these in many ways. And I think for me that becoming a Christian and obviously, the more that I over the years read and understood of the Bible and of theology and of God's incredible, not only sort of value for human life, but the way in which God uses the least of these, that has enabled me to bring to my own studies of history and indeed to my own teaching of history a kind of sense in which not only is there kind of purpose to this story, but of the sense in which the kind of the most vulnerable and the marginalized are actually incredibly important part of God's story.
And at a personal level as well, was there some answer to that sense of the next rung never being quite enough in terms of personal satisfaction?
Yes. I mean, this is not...
I like how she'll just answer the question, yes. And then expand upon it.
That's what they do.
The interesting thing, and I think it's really important to say this for a number of reasons, but when I became a Christian, when one becomes a Christian, it's not as if, some light has suddenly switched in terms of one's life instantly being able, and one's understanding instantly being able to change. This is, growth. God helps you grow, but, growth can be painful and growth can be slow. But, yes, definitely this sense that what I yearn for in life and seek after and pursue, and the way I end up spending the time that God's given me on this earth and whatever gifts he's given me, that has completely changed, that has altered. I am still called to be, many things apart from a child of God, but I still have this, I think, this vocation that God has given me as a historian, pursuing historical truth and teaching students. And that's incredibly, it's an important calling. It's not for one moment as if God devalues the mind or anything like that. In fact, we're to love God with all of our minds. But it is no longer for me the ultimate thing. It is now part of a story of somebody who's created in God's image and called to, given a life in which I want to serve him, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So it's an amazing story. You tell...
You getting all this, AP?
Mm-hmm.
This lady's spitting some facts and knowledge here to all you
Facts and logic.
all you lost sheep out there who are watching. Facts and logic. Facts and logic.
Sheeple.
That's what you get. Is what you get here.
Really well in the chapter of the book Coming to Faith through Dawkins. Dawkins is obviously on the front.
Again, link to that is in the description box for anyone who wants that. That's a collection of, I think, 12 people who, academics who became Christians, who were kind of spurred on by the silliness of the new atheism and the poor argumentation, and it caused them to actually take a deeper look.
Cover of the book. Now, your story deals more with another of the new atheists, Peter Singer,
Yes.
more directly. But you do mention Dawkins, and that and the fact that in your view there seems to be a sort of a bit of an incoherence sometimes in the way he talks about morality. Do you want to just spell that out a little bit, and why you think that sometimes even the best known spokesperson for atheism, it doesn't always seem to speak coherently on the issue of human dignity and value?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and yeah, it's often not just Dawkins, is it? Because I think often there's a kind of inconsistency in the sense that on the one hand, Dawkins and other new atheists are committed to arguing, look, there is no ultimate morality, there's no objective truth, and yet and so they shouldn't really be making any kind of moral claims. And yet, on the other hand, there are often these kind of highly moral claims that they want everybody to assent to, and yet they can't ground. So, for example, I just remember Dawkins in one particular interview talked about how, look, nature is blind, pitiless, and indifferent, his famous phrase there, and also it's kind of red in tooth and claw, but I don't want to live in a world like that. And therefore, there'll be, to paraphrase him, he'll encourage people to go and be kind and compassionate and so forth to one another. And yet there's a kind of deep logical inconsistency there, isn't there? Because if there is no ultimate morality, and indeed if Christian morality is just a fiction, then the idea somehow that everybody ought to be compassionate or loving to one another or respect each other's rights and so forth, all of these things fall down.
Yeah.
That's true. We have the comment here. Dawkins helped me a lot to lose my faith in 2010. Now he helped me regain it back. Bless this man.
Dawkins helped me lose weight.
You're doing great work, Richard Dawkins. I mean, think, at the end of the day, as far as the future is concerned, he's going to go down in history as the person who showed people what the real consequences of mass conversions to atheism would be. It wasn't good, but thank you. You as disastrous as it is, Richard, you did teach people an important lesson. And I mean that seriously in the sense that sometimes ideas make sense in people's heads, and then
they don't.
Yeah, when you actually put those ideas into practice, they're disasters. I'll give you an example of something within our lifetimes. It was, and some of you may not remember this, I was dealing with Islam back then, mainly on the left. There was this idea. If you go back before Obama, during the time of Obama, but even before that and so on, there was this idea that the reason you have all these terrorists coming out of Islam and so on is because they've been disrespected. They feel disrespected. We've shown contempt for them, and we've hurt their feelings a lot. And this is what's causing them to react like this. So if we were to just reverse this, if we were to reverse it, if we were to go and apologize and ask for a fresh start and say, hey, we like your prophet. We like your religion. Can we just get along now? Their hearts would melt. But instead, everyone's just dropping bombs on them and so on. So if you just said, hey, let's start over. We love you. We love your prophet. We love your book. We love all this stuff. We're sorry about all the things we've done in the past. Let's get a fresh start. Their hearts would melt and they would embrace us, and you would see all this terrorism stuff go away. That was, I would say, the dominant idea back then. If you go back like 2 decades, that was like the dominant idea. The reason these guys keep attacking is because they've been hurt and they've been insulted and they've been disrespected. So just reverse it, show them some respect, praise their prophet, praise their religion, and things are going to change. And you saw George Bush, he was praising Islam. Islam's wonderful, but Obama really dialed it up with the Cairo speech. He went over there, brilliant speech, brilliant, masterful speech. It was the greatest possible speech you could give if that theory is correct. So he gave that speech. Let's have that. We respect your prophet. We love your prophet. Hey, we were in the wrong. We've done bad things. Hey, let's just get a fresh start. What did you get? What's the ultimate outcome of all that?
Death
ISIS. ISIS. That's what you got out of that, right? It didn't work. Why? And guess what? Now I don't hear that view nearly as much. I don't hear that view of, oh, they just feel like they've been disrespected. That's the real source. I don't hear that nearly as much anymore. I'm talking like 1% of what I used to hear in like 2006, 2008, and so on. Why? They put their theory into practice and lots of people died and lots of people suffered horrible abuse and lots of people were brought into sex slavery and it was a disaster trying to deal with that problem. So you had an idea in people's heads, see, we could just fix all these problems by implementing our ideas, and nothing worked the way you expected it to work. Very similar to the new atheism. Here's the way things will work. Here's the way things work in my head. And all we need to do is make the world line up with what's going on in my head. And then you try it and it's actually a disaster. That should tell you something, that your idea was stupid and it should have been kept in your head and not put out into the world. But now that it's been put out into the world, we can thank you at least for showing people that when you have that idea in your head, you need to keep it in your head. Because if you actually put it in the world, complete disaster. Complete disaster. All right.
And I guess there's that old sort of the is of science doesn't equal an ought of how you ought to live your life. There's a sense in which Dawkins and many of the new atheists are very well known for their scientific acumen and everything else, but it doesn't necessarily buy you a moral world, does it?
No, that's right. And I think that's also something that really struck me, because in my life, one of the things that I had to confront when I did all this reading of the new atheists was that moral feelings, moral intuitions are one thing, but the idea that one ought to live in a particular way is quite another. So while I might have particular moral feelings about the innate sanctity of human life and the value of human life, if there's no way of grounding them, then I lack integrity, really, if I'm an atheist, because I'm assenting to a series of moral views that actually can't be grounded in atheism in the first place, in a kind of cosmically accidental universe.
You are a Christian now, and you've been continuing, though, as a historian, researching, writing. You've got a really exciting book. Just give us a sketch of what it's all.
All right, so now she's going into her book again. That basically changes the discussion to talk about that. Again, there is a link to her book in the description box for those. That's the Priests of History. And so you have a link to that, and you have a link to the book about Dawkins accidentally leading people to Christianity. And yeah, they address a couple more topics. So the link to the full discussion for those of you who want to continue, that's in the description box. The books are in the description box. Anything you want to check out. But we'll take a couple super chats and then be out for the day. Response to AP's Islamophobic racist message about Islam and why it has violence. Gwyneth here says, violence of Zen Buddhism led to Japanese World War II. Lol.
No.
You heard it here, Gwyneth. You've been refuted by AP. So, sorry. In your face. Don't say things like that anymore. Big Bird 2, the new atheism of this Stonebreaker lady in Ezekiel 36:26. God is truly the best author and comedian like Turkey, a country of wolf people. Lol. Ezekiel 36:26. That's the I will remove your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. So on. So I guess it's pointing out that the new atheists are actually playing a role in that, and that it's pretty funny, and something about God's providence in taking all this weird nonsense that we have to go through and making good out of it. What's up?
I don't know. I don't understand the comment about Zen Buddhism. I'm taking it seriously here right now. I know, but
I don't know if it was a joke or serious. I didn't know. That's why I moved on.
Yeah, because in Japan it was Shintoism that fueled the war attitude.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was a joke. Yes, it was Zen Buddhism.
I'm trying to figure out if that's a joke or if that's a serious assertion as well. But I don't know.
AP, thoughts on the Israel-Hezbollah truce? Some news are saying the U.S. threatened a UN arms embargo unless they accepted it, but Sleepy Joe denied it. Yeah, this is big news. I don't know the story. I haven't investigated, so I don't know the story behind it, but I'm sure AP knows a bit more. What are your thoughts on this?
I haven't really gone into the details of the ceasefire agreement yet. However, the ceasefire was not enforced by the U.S. The ceasefire was actually agreed upon and called for by Netanyahu himself, who said in a message sent to his own cabinet and to his own government that a ceasefire with Hezbollah at this point, in principle, is doable and is probably a good idea, because we have very much rebuked and pushed back Hezbollah and put great damage to their leadership. The goal there was never to completely annihilate Hezbollah. It's not going to be possible.
Yeah. So, hey, what's your view? That would basically be my view. If you want a ceasefire with Hezbollah, guess what? Yeah, they did some messed up stuff, and you crushed them for it, but they're still there. Do you need to annihilate them? I would say, even though they're a terrorist group, and you hope that they get crushed, they haven't. They didn't do anything near what Hamas did. Hamas basically called for their own destruction. Whereas Hezbollah has it. So if people were to say, hey, ceasefire with Hamas and let Hamas continue, I'd be like, no, that's a bad idea. With Hezbollah, it makes more sense. Is that your view? Or?
Yeah, you can also see this just looking at the fact that Hezbollah fired for a whole year at Israel, and Israel just sat there and didn't respond. It took them an entire year to declare war and to go in. So obviously, it was meant to be retaliatory and to put an end to the threat that they are posing. Of course, Israel has now agreed to a ceasefire, but there is also the concern that Hezbollah will not keep the ceasefire, because the thing is, there was a ceasefire before this, and Hezbollah was meant to stay behind a line and not to go too close to the border to Israel, which they consistently violated. This was a UN resolution. They consistently violated it and fired at Israel. So they didn't keep their side of the agreement ever. This time, Israel is kind of thinking and hoping that they got the message and they will stand down and stand back.
They sent some powerful messages.
Yeah. Because they took out the entire leadership within 1 week.
And blew the balls off a lot of people.
Yes. And they made clear that they can directly announce. I mean, they announced during the day, we are going to bomb this building in the middle of Beirut, so evacuate the place. And they evacuate the place. Civilians evacuate the place. The soldiers and security forces inside Lebanon actually cooperate and tell people to evacuate the place. And people watch from the distance and film it all as Israel actually drops a bomb in the middle of Beirut and takes down a huge building. And and the army of Lebanon doesn't do anything about it because they're like, we will stay out of this completely, and although this is our jurisdiction, we will comply. So this, it's quite obvious that Israel is the boss here, and you better acknowledge
proven
that.
it conclusively.
Yeah. So
And Hezbollah has seen that Iran cannot rescue them, that no one's
Yeah.
coming to rescue them. And so, yeah, makes sense to make your point as far as what Israel has just done. We've proven to you we are way smarter than you. We are way more powerful than you. We can blow your balls off. We can completely destroy your entire leadership in a week. Makes sense because if you're thinking long term, as an Israeli, you'd be looking forward to Iran falling, the government falling in Iran, and what sort of impact that's going to have on Hezbollah. Because guess what? I mean, Iran collapsing, that's going to affect Hezbollah in a lot of ways. So I'm not even talking about Israel actually going and making Iran collapse. Looks like Iran's going to collapse in one way or another, whether from within or from without or from a combination of factors. They just keep picking fights with people and with other countries, and they can't win those fights. And they're dealing with an impending civil war. And so looks like Iran is in the near future going to have a regime change. And so maybe they don't even have to deal. Maybe Israel doesn't even have to deal with Hezbollah because Hezbollah is going to lose its support. And it's going to be looking at that going, wait a minute, these were our overlords here and they just collapsed.
I mean, Iran said
maybe we're not going to have what it takes and we need to take a step back.
Iran said if the Zionist entity enters Gaza, then we will be at war with Israel. Nothing happened. They said if Israel directly attacks Hezbollah, then we will interfere and we will enter the war with Israel. Nothing happened. Israel took out the entire leadership of Hezbollah and started bombing directly inside Lebanese territory. Nothing happened. Iran stands down because they are terrified of Israel. So the message is quite clear, and Israel wants to take the opportunity to say, okay, we have made our point, we have sent the message, it's time to get back and focus on Gaza to finish the project and get rid of Hamas and have it all under control and to finish the war effort and put an end to it, because this cannot go on forever. So insofar, I think it's a good idea to have ceasefire with Hezbollah. There should not be a ceasefire with Hamas. But permanent ceasefire with Hezbollah, if it works and if Hezbollah abides by it, is only useful right now.
Yeah, that's the if. All right, you guys agree? You're not going to launch any rockets, and you're not going to be operating past that line right there. And as long as you abide by that, we will not do anything to you. If you do not abide by that, get ready for round two and get your balls ready.
And the good thing is also
not going to last long.
The good thing is also that they also agreed with the Lebanese army, and the Lebanese army is going to go to southern Lebanon, and is going to deploy like 5,000 personnel, soldiers to the southern border to Israel. So the whole part in the south that was occupied by Hezbollah will be removed there, and the Lebanese army will instead go down there. And the Lebanese army is no enemy of Israel. So.
And that's what you would prefer. That's what you would prefer if you're in Israel, right? Like in Gaza, Hamas controls Gaza. So there's no one in Gaza that can control Hamas for you. Whereas in Lebanon, you have a lot of people who do not want a fight with Israel. And so if these guys have some incentive to keep Hezbollah in check, great. You don't have to continue a war with Hezbollah. You let other people take care of it. Good stuff. So yes, it seems like we both approve of a ceasefire with Hezbollah as long as Hezbollah keeps their end of the deal. They've messed up and they were punished for it. They messed around and they found out. And so they'll have this as a good learning experience.
This is a funny thing. CC Unit says, "What's your thoughts on the IDF going into a church and mocking the Virgin Mary and destroying the church?" Is it referring to a video that's completely wrongly described here. It's not the IDF doing that. There's a video going around where some soldiers went into a church in southern Lebanon, which is common practice. If you are in a war zone, you go into every single building to take control of the situation. And there was a video where some soldiers went in there and started goofing off and doing dumb things like pretending to get married to each other and so on. And this went viral. And as soon as it went viral, guess what happened? CC? The IDF made a public statement and said that this is shameful and does not represent the IDF and Israeli values, and those involved in this will be subjected to disciplinary action. Does this now mean that the IDF is evil?
No, this means that all Jews approve of this. That's what we always hear, isn't it?
I mean, you have Christians going and doing dumb stuff in Christian churches. You have Muslims going and doing dumb stuff in Muslim mosques. You have Jews going in and doing dumb stuff in synagogues. And then you have sometimes your own religious group going in and doing dumb stuff in the other people's religious places. Does that now mean that because some dumb people did something dumb, that you are supposed to now blame the entire establishment, the entire organization, the entire religious group? No.
Yeah, what AP, you don't understand. No, it doesn't mean that with anyone else. It does mean that with Jews. If Jews are involved, then anything any Jew in the world does, or anything any Jew has ever said in all of history, you can take it and apply it to all Jews and say, see, this is what Jews do. So I don't know where you've been. I thought this was clear because you've seen it. You've seen it a lot over the past year and some change.
You know what I find so ironic about this whole thing? That this has been going on for centuries, maybe for 1,000 years. You will have people saying, "Oh, Jews! Look what the Jews do! The Jews say this, and the Jews do that, and the Jews say they want to kill us all." And then the Jews say, "Oh, the Jews hate all of us. The Jews hate all Muslims. They hate all Christians." And then the same people who make these assertions actually end up being the ones who demonize all Jews and who say really messed up things about them and who suggest that you should be intolerant and violent against them, and thereby ironically become the very same thing that they accuse the Jews of being, without ever establishing that Jews actually are that. So then you have people going around saying Jews are evil, they think we are all evil and we should be killed. But these very people are the ones who actually believe Jews are all evil and Jews should be killed, which is just so dumb. And this is also, I recently looked into, and I'm very glad to see that Dr. Michael Brown made a video about this, and Sam Shimoni even made a live stream about this, which I found very based, about Martin Luther. And sorry for all those who would get offended by criticizing Martin Luther.
No one's going to get offended if you. In fact, but little side note, it's interesting because from a Protestant perspective, Luther should be totally open to criticism because he's not. There is no Pope-like figure where, I mean, even Catholics can criticize the Pope and so on. Certain kind of statements that he makes that you're not supposed to question. But from a Luther is not infallible from a Protestant perspective, and therefore, if he crosses a line or says something stupid, you, as a Protestant, would not be obligated to.
But he was a lunatic, and the thing is, a lunatic can give you some great things, and you can take those great things as well. And maybe you can accept that he came and addressed some very, very serious issues, and actually brought great enlightenment to your faith. You could accept that while also accepting that the very same person who did that is a human and was literally a lunatic. So here's the thing: he wrote a book.
To be clear, it seems he had some mental difficulty, and they got worse as time went on. And that's so if you catch him when he's young, you can say, okay, this guy's pretty good here. And I seem to I don't know, just like someone who breaks down and starts seeing conspiracies everywhere. Like it's like a parallel with that. And so on.
He did what Muhammad did. He it's kind of funny. He did exactly what Muhammad did. He started first reprimanding Christians for being unfair to Jews, and said the only reason that Jews have not accepted Christ and have not converted to Christianity is that
Because you've been
we
mistreated.
have failed to properly treat them and to properly
And you've presented them a corrupt message. If you present the truth, then they'll convert. Yeah.
Then he started with his own approach, because he was like, and yeah, if we just do it the right way, the way I will do it, then they will understand and they will convert and so on. So he goes to the Jews and starts preaching to them, and the Jews are like, no. And then he starts with his lunacy about how the Jews are actually evil and they follow Satan, and then he starts going into all of the conspiracy theories and actually starts asserting that Jews sacrifice babies and drink their blood and are behind all the chaos in the world and so on. And he wrote a book that is very ironically called On the Jews and Their Lies. And the funny thing is, I have the book and I started studying it. And
bet you do.
And the funny thing about it is that the book is called On the Jews and Their Lies, but it's
filled with lies.
He lies about them nonstop, and then suggests. He says, my suggestion to Christians is that we should no longer tolerate these filthy, evil, satanic beings, and that we should indeed start burning down their homes and their synagogues and bury them under the dirt, and also possibly put them to the sword, or at least enslave them and so on. It's like, what?
pretty bad.
And this is the thing. Like, the very same people who get into this whole lunacy of accusing others, especially the Jews, because it's just always so easy, of doing and saying and believing messed up things, start actually doing those very same things against the Jews that they accuse the Jews of. You could now have Jews
like
turning
clockwork,
around,
isn't it?
You could have Jews now actually turn around and legitimately say, look at this, Christians say all of these things about us. Christians want to kill us. Christians believe this and this and this and that about us. They could legitimately just do that, because the very same people who depict Jews as devils do that very same thing. How is it so difficult to realize this? How is it so difficult to see the irony in that, and to just move away from it and start not being so gullible?
That would be a good idea, but that was very racist against Protestants, I have to point out.
I think Protestants are pretty based. That
said, Luther was a douche for the things he said about Jews. There. You happy? You happy, Luther?
He was worse than Hitler, to be honest, in his speech about.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad stuff. And you wonder, like, I almost want to read it just to see, like, how could you possibly justify this given what you're commanded by Jesus? Like, how could you reconcile this in your head? And I'm wondering if there's some sort of reconciliation in there. Like, when you had Christians and they talk about just war theory and so on, it's like, okay, how do we take our ideas about human beings being created in the image of God and us being commanded to love everyone, including our enemies, and still acknowledge the fact that war is a reality of this world? And so they come up with just war theory. You have principles that you have to operate by. The point is, I understand that even in the context of war and so on, but it's like, hey, let's go around, burning Jews' houses down. So it's like, where are you getting that one from? How is that making sense to you? Yeshua the King says, David critiques atheist as if AP isn't even there. AP is not an atheist. If AP were an atheist, I would not be criticizing atheism at all. I would be extremely friendly and say that it's a great worldview and is extremely enlightened and good for the world. But AP is an agnostic, so I can talk trash about atheism now.
Atheists make me sick.
Comrade Mike Wingelinge, nothing be upon me. I was an atheist before this stream, but now I'm even more atheist. It has increased my atheist iman. I don't even believe I exist anymore. Solipsism is cryptotheism. That's funny. If you guys know what solipsism, you'll know how funny that is. AP, play long intro for Hotel California, please.
Yes, inshallah.
Do you know the intro for Hotel? You know what he's talking about? You know what LaBelle is talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I know.
Awesome
I
song.
still
Intro.
listen to that. I still listen to that song quite often, as if it was a new song.
Hotel California.
Yeah.
Phenomenal song. Phenomenal song. Yep. All right, AP, you got to translate this for us. What? You have one job. You have one job.
That's the I don't know what that says.
I'm wondering if I could click on it.
I bet
Okay.
there's a Jew somewhere
Didn't
here.
allow me. Did not
tell us
allow me. What?
I bet there's a Jew somewhere here who will tell us what it says. What does it say?
What's it say, everyone?
What's it say?
Google Translate Hebrew.
And Hebrew.
Oh, it says tick-tock time to empty. I don't know if that's an accurate translation.
That's what it says?
Tick-tock time to empty.
That's funny. That's a weird thing to say.
That's very, very weird.
That's a weird thing to say.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Again, links to the books that were referenced in the video we watched in the description box for those of you who are still nerds enough to read still. And link to the full. We watched basically the first half of that interview. There's still another half. They do. I looked at the topics to come up after her discussion about. It's actually interesting, her perspective on history. She's saying that we live in an ahistorical era and that people are so hyper individualized and so on that they don't see their connection to history or their need for it and so on. And it looks like there's a discussion about the scientific revolution and so on. So you could check that out. Other than that, I don't even know what our schedule is for the rest of this week. We've got holiday.
How do you pronounce this, Yusuf? Is this Tik Tok Zaman Lerokan or something like that?
Yeah, did you just is this basically just a transliteration?
No, I think it says some Zaman there, which means time. So I wonder if this is supposed to be a literal translation or what is this? Did I even pronounce it right? Let me know. Lerokin.
No, you didn't, because you don't know the language. If it were Turkish, you would have probably gotten it almost right.
Alhamdulillah.
All right, guys, I don't know what our schedule is this week because holidays tend to throw things off, but we will keep you all updated. I just recorded a video before we went live, so I'm going to edit that tonight, and that shall be up in the morning unless something goes horribly, horribly wrong. That'll be up. All right, everyone. We will catch you next time, where AP is going to demonstrate his phenomenal new guitar playing skills. In the meantime, we'll conclude with the blowing of the shofar, which he already knows how to play. Let's see the Eagles play that one.